And I believe we're live. Superb. Has it worked? I think we're live, Mike. I think we're live.
We are live. It works. It's on. It's on.
I cannot see you yet, Mike. I feel like two old men here. I can't hear you. I can't see you.
Yeah. Well, I see you loud and clear, and it's good to be here. It's good to be part of this.
Superb. Well, yeah, it's a real joy to be here. Welcome to everybody who's watching us. Welcome to Common Sense. My name is Mike Omni, or MT, just to make things easier for you. I'm the editor-in-chief here at Common Sense, and I'm joined today by...
Is that my cue?
That's your cue, Mike. That's your cue.
We didn't rehearse this bit, but I'm Michael Mporfo, and I'm the political editor here at the Common Sense Network. And we're absolutely delighted to be part of this, this evening. Historic in many ways, MT, and we're going to get into that. And of course, we'll have a few people joining us. So interesting evening lined up for everybody.
Absolutely. There's so much to look forward to, as you've said. Someone said it off air that this is in many ways the highlight for us. We've had such a tough year. That this is like the Super Bowl for nerds. So if you're staying up, I hope you've got your snacks. I've got juice here. I've got some popcorn, of course. So I'm ready for what's going to be really, really interesting. And we're going to have lots of different debates, lots of different people coming on, different commentators, public pundits. We hope to have some of you guys on YouTube commenting and really getting involved, and we'll have breaking news ever so often. But also a chance to respond to what you're saying. So, we're all staying up together. So I think we're going to need each other's help to get through this. So please get your thoughts in, comment, get involved, get stuck in. We will be reading every single thing that's posted. And so without further ado, let's just get stuck in, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So we're here for this, what is probably the most contested, the most fraught American presidential election in my lifetime, at least. Millions of Americans, at least 100 million, have already voted because of the mail-in ballots. Donald Trump, who's 74, let's not forget, is seeking re-election. And if the exit polls, the predictions are anything to go by, he's got quite a bit of work to do, right? And if he loses, he'll be the first person to lose a kind of re-election since 1992. So he's trying not to do that. National polls have Joe Biden, who's 77, ahead, right? So he should win the popular vote based on those statistics, but also he should win the Electoral College. We'll explain a bit about what that means in a minute. Whether that's going to happen or not, we do not know, because let's not forget, folks, it was only 4 years ago where equally I was beaming and excited to see Hillary Clinton, lift up the proverbial trophy. Of course, it didn't happen. So I don't want to count my chickens yet. I want to be very, very gentle because we never know what's going to be happening. To give you a sense of what's been happening so far, the FBI already investigating reports that some voters have been getting calls urging them to stay at home. That's kind of problematic. So that's what's been happening on ground right now. Of course, some polls have closed, some are closing. So we should see in the next few hours or so some results coming in, and we're going to help you go through every single one of them. Before we crack on, we just thought, hey, listen, you're going to hear a lot of random terms used today. So let's just break down the terms, if you like. So we've got Siobhan, who's a journalist at the Common Sense Network, journalist at Common Sense, and we thought we would bring on Siobhan and give her a chance to explain a bit about what the Electoral College actually is. Siobhan, of course, is in America right now, so she's very close to the heat, close to the action. So before we crack on with all the commentary, Siobhan, do you just want to come on, share a bit about what the Electoral College is, but also how things are going in America? Of course, we're Brits here, observing. You're actually there. So I don't know if Siobhan's on, but I would love to hear from you, Siobhan. What just give us a brief explanation, but also how you're finding things.
Hey.
Siobhan, before you speak, Siobhan, good to have you. You need to tell us if you have voted. Everyone wants to know that.
Of course I voted.
Hey! I like the look on Siobhan's face.
Come on, Mike.
Like I said, yes, I voted. And I was one of the people who early voted.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And thank God I did vote early because now I'm sick. So I
That's actually not funny at all. Sorry about that.
no, it's not. But it's just very ironic when people talk about, oh my God, COVID and all this stuff like that. And then when you end up getting COVID, it's like, dang, that sucks. So it's like, shoot, this thing is real. So it's just one of those things that I'm glad I voted early, but you didn't bring me on to talk about my ailments. So you basically want to know how things going on in America. It's nerve-wracking. It's so nerve-wracking. Honestly, it really is, because regardless if you are a Biden supporter or a Trump supporter, it's just really nerve-wracking times. Because honestly, while people may think that it's going to go a certain way, you honestly don't know, because I'm looking at CNN right now, and some of the suburban areas that Trump won in 2016 has flipped. So you just don't know. So yeah, it's just one of those crazy times.
Well, one of the terms, Siobhan, that's always used is, a popular vote and electoral college. And people always say that, let's not get too excited about the popular vote. Let's also focus on the electoral college. So for folks who are watching, again, from the UK, who are wondering, well, what is this electoral college? How would you describe it? I know people go lots of different ways, but how do you think about it as an American?
So basically what the Electoral College is there's 538 electors, basically comprised of as the amount of people in the Senate and the amount of people in the House of Representatives, plus 3 additional electors and for Washington, D.C. All of those people comprise of the Electoral College. And when I mean people, I mean the electors, not necessarily the Senate and Congress. Those just give you the numbers. And so that gives you the numbers. Basically, it's whoever wins has the votes of the state gets the state. So let's just say if Trump more than likely will get Texas, if the majority gets votes for Trump, that state is going to get, Texas will go with Trump. Trump gets those electoral college votes. And I guess the thing between the popular vote and the electoral vote is the Electoral College is supposed to be one of those fair rules for a democracy such as America. So basically the little states like Rhode Island, Kentucky won't get bombarded by California.
Right.
Which, because California has like a more population than Rhode Island or Kentucky. So that's the idea of the Electoral College.
Gotcha. That was helpful, succinct. And of course, important for people to know, the way you win an election is to get more than half. So you need to get more than 270. So it's possible to win the popular vote. And that just means, a kind of first past the post system where whoever gets the most votes wins, and how they do it in different, and in some countries. In the USA, it's possible to win the popular vote, to get the most votes, but lose the Electoral College. And then, of course, it's the Electoral College that actually decide who becomes president. They'll vote later in December. And like you said, Siobhan, they will go with the state. So for instance, if in Florida, which has something like 28 or 23, I always forget, electoral votes, if Biden gets 56% of the votes in Florida, then he wins the whole Electoral College, and essentially they vote for him. So that's very helpful to know. We're going to bring Siobhan on a bit later. We're going to say bye for now, Siobhan, but I know you're coming on very soon to talk a bit more about, your thoughts on some of the other topics. At this stage, I'm going to bring on Adam, who's one of our journalists, again, at Common Sense. And we're going to just go into the state of the race and go into everything. Mike, whilst Adam's coming on, how are you feeling about this? Are you also nervous, anxious like Siobhan? What are you thinking?
Yeah, look, Siobhan really summed it up extremely well there. I think the reality is, there's a lot that you and I would enjoy as these political animals who enjoy the sport, as it were. crunching the numbers, looking at who's ahead, where. I'm obviously tracking a couple of key sites here on my other screen just to get an insight, and intriguing to see which states already come in. But we won't give that away just as yet. But then there's the other side, and Siobhan raises a very good point. 2016 was good at teaching us a lesson that sometimes the political science is not really a science, it's more of an art, and it's deciding on how you kind of navigate that in this new form. And Donald Trump really disrupted this. You and I have said it many times on our platform, which was called Moving Part, where you really look at how Trump took the political playbook, tore it up, and said, right, the rules have changed. So at this stage, it's very early on in the evening. Hard to call at this stage. Ton of anxiety if you're like Siobhan, I imagine, really invested because you are in America, you're living it, and you're not just an observer and a spectator, you're somebody who's engaged with it. So it'll be intriguing to see how it unfolds throughout the rest of the evening. Yeah,
definitely. And Adam, you're here again in the UK. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking? You in the waiting room, I heard you saying, you kind of blurted it out like, this is so exciting.
It's something that I've been looking forward to since the first Tuesday of November in 2016. Like this is the highlight of the year. It really is. I think it's definitely a highlight because this is such an important election. It's so close to call. There is just, I genuinely do not know who will win. And looking at the projections now, it's still too early to call. Some states, I think, is a really fascinating election to watch. I think that Donald Trump has done some really positive stuff on the economy. There's no doubt about that. The economy has boomed under Donald Trump, but race relations are at an all-time low. The coronavirus pandemic has hit the nation. There is a lot of issues that voters are really thinking about. And I think this could be a pivotal moment in history, because if Donald Trump wins again, then it starts to raise questions about what the next 4 years of America is going to look like in terms of race relations. What is the coronavirus pandemic going to turn out? In the UK, we're going back into lockdown. He has been very much more resistant than the Prime Minister has about going into lockdown. It's been at the forefront of his campaign that he didn't want to lock down the nation again. I think this is a really fascinating election, and I am a proper political nerd. I've been banging on about this in work for the last couple of days, and I'm up all night with you guys watching this. So let's get in for a long night.
Superb. It is a marathon. We must say that very clearly. Like, it's a long race. We don't think in the next 4 hours of our coverage everything will be sorted. In fact, if the polls are anything to go by, or equally all the media reports, it may take us days or weeks before we see those mail-in votes being counted, and we can even start to say, here's what's going to happen. I'm just seeing coming up on the screen here that Trump is expected to win Florida 51% to 48%. That's scary to think about, but we'll get into that in a minute. But anyways, let's talk about the state of the race, guys, because when we had our election in the UK here, it was called the Brexit election, because ultimately that was the one thing that was on everyone's lips. What's going to happen with Brexit? What's going to happen with Brexit? Mike, is this election basically the kind of coronavirus election in America?
100%. You summed it up really well. There'll be two things on the minds of the Americans. The first thing is coronavirus and how that's been handled on either side of the spectrum. You might be somebody who is a Trump supporter / Republican / libertarian, who believes, why are my freedoms being absolutely limited? Human beings, especially in the land of the free, should have the ability to decide what they want to do and how they want to handle the pandemic in their household. Or you might be on the other side of the spectrum and argue, well, actually, I'd really like some state intervention. There's a deadly disease out there. I need financial support. Definitely let's go the lockdown route with the huge stimulus package, which was, of course, a huge point of contention in the run-up to today, the 3rd of November. The stimulus package, which in some cases might be remembered as the gift that never was. So that was the first thing. And secondly, in addition to coronavirus, I think there'll be a huge thing on the minds of the Americans. And Adam touched on it, the economy. It's this big word that we like to use and throw out the term out there, but money in people's pockets. Adam made a good point there, which I think, is worth noting. You cannot negate the fact that there was some level of success. And some people might argue that was inherited, that was an Obama economy, which Trump pretty much continued in that momentum. Fair enough. But when you look at the numbers, essentially, within the Trump presidency, there was a level of improvement in the economy. I think those two things will be first and foremost on the mind of American voters. Will it be called a COVID election? Probably. I mean, it's happening in the middle of a global pandemic. So it's a really defining moment. And of course, we've got a few to pick from within that COVID spectrum that we can unpack as we go along.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct on so many levels, because I just think to myself, when you're trying to unseat an incumbent, you've got to get your wits about you. And I know in Moving Parts, which is a show that we do here at the Commentators Network, if you're joining us, you should hit the subscribe button, by the way, if you haven't done that yet. We talked at length about, this kind of Biden messaging and how effective his messaging was, right? Because, let's be honest, there's so many issues in America right now. You still got healthcare. Obamacare did well to get 20 million people coverage, but there's arguments about pre-existing conditions, and Medicare isn't that effective. You've got issues with Medicaid. So that's a big issue. You've got trade and the deficits that exist, and Trump renegotiating all these different trade deals. There's so much happening, but it seems as though Biden's message was really about to steal his lines, the soul of America. We need to, after this massive pandemic, we need to restore the soul of America. And I guess this election will really be a kind of a judgment on whether that was effective or not. Did that cut through? Did he really make the case that he was the person who was going to lead America out of this pandemic? It's something that I've cringed sometimes when I saw Obama saying, "There's only one person that can take us out of this pandemic," and I'm like, well, it's a pandemic, bro. I know you've got a good 3-pointer. Yeah, we saw the shot. However, this isn't. It's a pandemic. No one knows what's happening. It's a global pandemic. So let's stop that narrative that it's just Trump that's handling this badly. However, one thing I do want us to do now is to make some predictions, because folks, and I want folks listening to join us in doing this as well. Who do you think is going to win? Let us know in the comment section how you think it's going to go. I've had some prophets from my old church sending me thoughts. I've had all the political junkies going, here's what the stats say. I want to know, and I'd love to read some of the comments out, who people think is going to win, how they think is going to win. And what we'll do, Mike, is we can maybe put some of our predictions to paper and maybe share screen and show what states Trump would need to win to actually win the presidency overall. But whilst we're doing that, I just wondered if there were any comments that people had about who's going to win. Someone says, Marianne says, I pray that Biden wins. He's going to need your prayer. I can promise you that.
Are you okay there, Mike? Are you taking it strange? Do you need me to kind of jump in there? What's happening?
I'm laughing at the comment. Someone says, you believe Biden will pull it, or will American patriotism prevail? What do you think about that? Do you think it's Biden versus American patriotism?
Yeah, well, look, it's always going to be viewed as that, right? So yeah, I was chuckling with a friend of mine earlier in the week about last week actually, about how every time you saw an advert that said, remember to vote, it was always a Democrat saying, vote Democrat, which is fair. And then there's always that notion of the people who support America, who are for the freedoms that we enjoy and liberty, always tend to be, in the Republican camp. So that's been kind of the messaging and the rhetoric that's come through. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm chuckling here as someone saying, not looking good in Florida. This is Crusader. I always love names like that. If that turns blue, we make it's like Crusader. What?
Well, we have a very odd relationship with that name here in the UK.
Yeah, we do. But we'll gloss over it for tonight, purely because it's not about us, which is fantastic. If that turns blue, we may as well go to sleep. I think we know where Crusader's loyalties might lie. So quite interesting, and really, really appreciate all the comments, and hopefully you keep them coming. I'm really looking forward to, in a short while, we're going to have a bit of an intermission where we get an update on just, what's taken place in the last hour or so in terms of polls that have come in and results. That'll be interesting. I've been intrigued. I've had an eyebrow raised or two, because you raise a good point. There's this election night excitement, which is fantastic. But what you raise is amazing in that, or is extraordinary rather, in that this is probably the first time in a US presidential election in a long time, or in living memory, for example, that we're going to potentially have to wait a few days before the winner is declared. It might be one of those events where you build up to this crescendo and then both camps kind of can't pop the champagne because they go, well, we're gonna have to wait another couple of days, guys. So pack away the champagne. Let's maybe settle for a cup of tea and figure it out in the next few days. So I think that in itself is peculiar, and we'll see how that plays out. And I think that's when it might get contentious. That's when we might see Trump deciding to go to the courts to contest the result. We might see the Biden camp do the same. So all of these things are quite interesting and quite literally moving parts in that sense.
you love that show.
I just couldn't help it. I walked into it. I couldn't help it.
There is a route to victory for Trump.
Yeah.
It is difficult. I mean, most media outlets have Biden winning very comfortably. The Economist, which is probably why I sit most comfortably, they have Biden winning 346 Electoral College votes, and they have Trump winning 192. Important to note that they revised that. They had Trump winning less, and they just took it up. So maybe that's a trend of what's going to happen. We don't know. Yeah. But really, we don't need to watch for some safe states. Places like Oklahoma will go Trump. Places like North Dakota will go Trump. But these places carry, 3 electoral votes, 6 electoral votes. Not really much to look out for. However, the real big swing states that we have to be okay. Oh, well, I guess I should do the same thing for Biden. California will go Biden, and that's always been. It's always been a very safe. Just because California carries 55 electoral college votes, right? And it's such a safe thing that Democrats can just bank on, right? They just bank on it. By the way, quick bit of news. Just saw with Florida now. It's now 49-50 Biden to Trump. So things are changing. But the states to really watch out for is Florida, which we're watching with keen interest. Arizona, that carries 11 electoral college votes. We've got to watch out for North Carolina. Again, these are places where Biden's currently edging it, but it's still within the margin of error, which means there's a 2 to 3% chance that it could go either way. North Carolina, we're going to watch out for. Georgia carries 16 electoral votes. We're going to watch out for. Iowa carries 6 votes. And Iowa's always been that state that if you win, it's normally a good predictor of who will get the presidency. So my prediction, Mike, just so it's super clear before we have our breaking news segment, my prediction here is that Biden will win. I'm going to put down that Biden will win 356 electoral votes, college votes, and that Trump will win 182. What do you think?
Well, I mean, look, that's not fair because we can't both agree. Then that's not an interesting conversation.
Not interesting. It's not interesting.
Let me be controversial and say no. I think Donald Trump is going to win. Look, it's hard to call because
really is it hard to call?
Well, listen, I'm taking a page out of the 2016 book here. We were very confident in 2016, and of course, different race, different time, etc. But the current polling is incredibly decisive. I would just be shocked. Let me put it this way: to see Trump make a huge dent in that. It'd be interesting to see how much of a dent he makes in trying to kind of salvage whatever needs to be salvaged. So let's see how that plays out, definitely. And like you said, there's some of those key swing states, Florida, Arizona, Georgia. I saw someone make a comment about Georgia earlier. I think it was Marion again talking about, Georgia on the hotline too, So we'll see how that plays out over the course of the evening.
Super. We'll see. But let me make way for Josh, who's going to give us a bit of news. Is Josh is just prepped and ready to go? Can Josh hear me?
I am indeed. I'm ready to go from the election HQ that is Surrey Quays in Southeast London.
Fantastic. I like your artwork. It's awesome.
Thank you. I mean, this is to represent hopefully the new dawn in America. Whatever that may look like.
That's fantastic.
I mean, I'm meant to be neutral here, so my job here is to update you all on the breaking news part of the night. So what's happened in the last half an hour to hour or so.
Absolutely.
So to give you kind of the broad overview, polls closed in Florida, Indiana, and Kentucky. So as expected, Trump is projected to take Indiana and Kentucky. Biden is poised to take Vermont, which means that our current total in terms of electoral votes projected is Trump 11 versus Biden's 3.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Michael? What kind of can we draw any conclusions from that? Do you reckon?
Yeah, look, it's early doors. It's always one of those this is not even the first half of a football match. You're talking first 10 minutes really of the match. Everyone is kind of really settling into the game. As expected, you mentioned some of those states where we're not really surprised that Trump is coming out on top. In those particular states. So early doors. Let's not try and be those guys. Oh well, yeah, it looks like Trump's bouncing back. Well, that remains to be seen, Josh.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like Michael was saying, this is going to be a marathon, and to expect any decisive results now is a bit of a stretch. But we have got some early results out of Florida, which look very interesting. So it looks like that Biden is poised to take what they term a bellwether county, that's at Pinellas, which supposedly will then, or has in the past historically gone the way of the eventual person who wins Florida. So Trump won that county by 1 point this year. However, even though Biden seems poised to take this again, these are all early results here. We're as political nerds, we are just we're kind of grasping at everything that we can get, even though it's not really much. So here are the straws, audience. So what's more disappointing for Biden actually is that in Miami Dade, I believe it's pronounced, Trump is actually up 54% to 45%. He's already up 120,000 on the day votes than his 2016 total. And when we're looking at voting from Miami, from the suburbs, we really should be expecting a strong performance from the Democrats. But again, what we could see, these are early results, and what we could see is a shift as mail-in ballots come in and they're counted, et cetera, et cetera. So it could all still be to play for.
Yeah, man, that's quite intriguing that you talk about, the suburbs, to borrow a phrase that has been quite a contentious one not just in this race, in the 2016 race, with Trump talking about how, suburban women love him and they appreciate him keeping the neighborhood safe. So intriguing to see how that definitely unfold, Josh. And of course, you make a huge distinction there, and we alluded to it very briefly earlier about how, ultimately, on the day votes, fantastic, it can look good on paper. How much is yet to be counted? Have you picked up anything in terms of scouring and looking at your coverage, just alluding to, how that mail-in ballot process is going? And, we know over 100 million people have already voted, which is quite a significant chunk of people if you're talking about a population as sizable as America is. But as of today, election day, it's all happening. Has there any been noise around mail-in ballots?
So in terms of early turnout numbers, we're looking at 100 million already voted, and that's just a staggering number. So we're talking, in terms of the population of America, a third of the population or thereabouts already voting. We're already seeing, before the election, 73% of the entire 2016 turnout already happening before election day. And they're predicting a 7 to 10% increase in turnout overall over 2016. So in terms of what that looks like, so that's a mix of absentee ballots and mail-in ballots and early voting. And of those who have done the early voting, 57%, according to a Change Research poll, were for Biden. And Trump is trailing by about 28%. But for those who are planning to vote on election day, Trump is ahead by 18%. So we've got, the usual, the chaos of coronavirus, and now we've got the chaos of the fact that people who have already voted are overwhelmingly Democratic, but people who are going to vote are going to be overwhelmingly Republican. So what's been termed in the media is that in some states we could see a blue mirage or red mirage, where it looks like Trump is winning or it looks like Biden is winning. Then either the mail-in ballots are counted or the on-the-day ballots are counted, and suddenly it's a different situation. So this is why people are so worried about the stability of American society, basically, because if it looks like Trump's winning and he declares victory, his supporters take to the streets. But then a week later, it turns out Biden has won. Who knows? Everything's up in the air.
Yeah, that's such a really, really good way of just framing that, Josh. You hit that spot on. It's about this kind of weird, limbo period that America has to contend with. You're absolutely right. There's been this idea and this notion. Generally, when there's a high voter turnout, and we've seen this in historic patterns, it tends to be in favor of whoever the Democratic candidate is. But then again, having said that, it's been clear that a huge amount of Republican supporters are absolutely in favor of in-person voting. They seem to enjoy the act of putting a physical ballot in a box and having their vote registered in that way. Not surprising at all that there's a significant turnout, of course, via mail-in ballot due to the coronavirus. What was, of course, intriguing, you remember this, if you've been following us as well at home, when Trump was trying to bring into question how, capable is the U.S. Postal Service? Are they going to be able to handle the sheer volume? And of course, there have been the odd stories, where people have tweeted, "Oh, I saw some mail-in ballots, dumped here." But there's been nothing of a substantial scandal, I believe, anyway, worthy deep dive investigation. You want to come in there, Josh?
So, not a scandal on the mail-in ballot side, but the USPS recently revealed that they had lost 300,000 ballots, right?
Wow.
And bearing in mind that some of the margins, that they estimate that Trump overall, due to his margins, won 2016 by less than 50,000 votes. That's 300,000 votes that have supposedly gone missing. A judge has ordered USPS to review and find the ballots. USPS has said no. They've said we're going to do it according to our own schedules. And bearing in mind that USPS is now run by a Trump appointee, DeJoy, who has from the very beginning, was hauled in front of Congress, and Congress said, hey, buddy, what's going on? You're slowing down the mail. You're doing all these sorts of things. So again, this is another point of controversy. Imagine, Biden loses by a margin that is equal to mail-in ballots that have been lost. It's all a mess. It's all a mess.
No, it's a good point to raise, Josh. You're right. That Trump appointment as the head of the U.S. Postal Service was something that we pointed out early on in the race about how that might come into play. Intriguing that they have the ability to then almost counter the court and say, well, look, we have our processes and our systems in place. If you're in the Biden camp, you're definitely watching that closely, and you're making sure at the very least that you have a plan. There's a play. If we feel uncomfortable with how the mail-in ballots have been managed, then we want to raise that in some sort of forum. I see a couple of people talking here in the comments about using the mail-in ballot format. Please let us know in the comments if you're in America. Have you voted early? What was your experience? Do you have any confidence in the mail-in ballot and how it's working? And then we can definitely engage with that as the evening goes along. But to everybody, thank you so much for just being part of this evening. Josh, thanks, mate, for that incredible, I might add, news update and briefing. I thought that was insightful. We've got Mr. MT back on the line, and we're going to chop it up a bit more as we go along. But Josh, we'll catch up with you a bit later on this evening.
See you soon. Bye.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. MT, you've heard that update from Josh. Some interesting, but not surprising stuff coming through. But also, just it's noteworthy. I think the point that he talks about, that kind of blue or red mirage, where there's a semblance of hope, and then a potential dip in that. So interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you're right. This is not usual times. It's odd listening to Josh there. He kind of he raised my blood pressure some more. I'm already.
Young people do. They do this.
I was like, oh no, I know it's crazy times. Just like it's really crazy. And really, I think what makes this race so different, and why I think so many people are interested. I mean, in August, over 500,000 people in in 3 states had already requested ballots, right? Which is just unheard of. That doesn't happen. People are typically disillusioned. You often hear about political commentators talking about, why does no one care about politics? Why does no one care about, but this election, everyone cares, right? So already that's really interesting. Now, just quick note, now in Florida, the polls are showing that Biden is 50%. Donald Trump is reporting 49%. So Biden's just pipped it there, but we'll see what happens, right? But back to just how unique the situation is. I was just thinking to myself, well, what's the normal order of things? Well, typically what happens is by kind of the November the 3rd, November the 4th, we typically have someone who's the presumptive winner, so to speak.
Right.
As you remember last year, 4 years ago, you had Hillary Clinton come with her regal purple suit. She made the concession speech, and that is it's essentially her telling her supporters, stand down, it's all over, let's move on. Then around
stand by.
Stand back and stand by.
Yeah.
Right? She said stand by, which is kind of disarming them, right? And then later on in December the 14th, the Electoral College meet, they cast their vote. In January the 20th, so to speak, the new president is sworn in. That's the normal way of doing things. Now, if you've been listening to Trump's speeches, that may not happen. Now, in the event that Trump doesn't concede, he says, like you said, the 300 votes were lost and those 300 votes belong to me. Or he says that, it's on election night that we should declare the winner, which is just foolish because that's just not how elections work. Like, of course, what happens if Trump doesn't concede, Mike? What happens?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. Well, anyone from precedent anyway. I like to say, in all my wisdom, that the rules, if you want to take, the UK example just for a brief moment, the rules in the House of Commons, which is our parliament, or if you're watching from America, it's our version of, the House of Congress. They were written with, gentlemen and ladies in mind. In other words, there's an unwritten rule, ironically, within the written rule that, hey, politics is, of course, a very difficult sport. However, we play according to a gentleman and a ladies' code that says, you concede to your opponent when they've done better than you, and then you hold them to account in opposition, and then hopefully you can win back the trust of the electorate that you're seeking to win. That's been the code. America hasn't seen a scenario in this kind of format. In other words, in a pandemic context, where the postal service has been brought into question, where there's the rushed, if you want to call it, appointment of a Supreme Court justice in the hope of that justice potentially being conservative leaning. So the last time we saw two presidential candidates head to the courts was, of course, Bush and Al Gore. Since then, we haven't really seen anything like that. So what happens if Mr. Trump decides he's not going to concede the White House? I don't know. I hope that's comprehensive enough.
No, of course, and it's a good answer. We don't know, but I guess it speaks to the kind of the the kind of times we're in where that is a possibility. Trump might do that. I mean, remember when he was asked during the last campaign, or presidential campaign, or election rather, if you lose, would you stand down? And he said, "We'll see. We'll have to see." And a part of you wonders, is he kidding? Is he joking? I mean, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but You know, there were shops in New York that were boarding up their gates, like they were boarding everything up because people are afraid of riots. I mean, and I put a tweet out. I said, "Isn't it interesting that here's America, right? That prides itself on being this ridiculously democratic and modern country. Don't forget, America still uses voting systems from 1970, right?
100%.
But anyways, it prides itself on being this modern democratic, and it goes around the world exporting their version of democracy. But in America, American democracy seems to be crumbling before our very eyes when the loser of the election may not even concede. Siobhan, I know you're with us. What do you make of this? What do you think would happen if, for some reason, Donald Trump loses, or at least, you know, all indications show him November the 3rd, November the 4th, losing the election, but he refuses to concede?
Well, what's one more thing that's unconventional that's becoming conventional? I mean, honestly, that would just be the cherry on top. And one of the things that I think that will probably happen is I believe the Supreme Court will come into play like it did in 2000. So, I mean, sorry, people are around already.
Election party? Are you having an election party?
Absolutely not.
Siobhan, you should be popping the champagne before you win. Come on, you gotta wait.
Well, here's the thing. Depending on how this election goes, y'all might see me with a hot toddy. Depending on how this all goes. I'm just saying, I'm just letting y'all know, forewarning. Once they start calling state, it probably will be, oh, hey, Shabbat, how do you think? But if he decides to contest it, which we will never hear the end of it, honestly. So I don't. He wins, you're not going to hear the end of it. He loses, you're not going to hear the end of it. I don't see a win either way. And honest, I just don't. So if you could test it, I do think this will go to the Supreme Court. And because he got the judge he wants in the Supreme Court, it more than likely will go his way.
Siobhan, let me just quiz you on that, you know, if I may, and you raised, sorry for pointing, that was unnecessary.
Mike, you forgot, you have to do this. You got to do this.
I know.
This is the politician's point.
Why do I do that? That's so weird. Forgive me, Siobhan. I want to just quiz you on that. You know, I was watching with great interest. I'm one of those people with no life that watched literally Justice Barrett's hearing through the Senate, literally blow for blow, you know. And I must say this, as a legal mind, I personally found it quite impressive. I did. You know, I'm not going to pretend I wasn't wowed by the ability to really produce some really coherent and sensible arguments. Do you think there was a kind of a backdrop that Justice Barrett, forgive me for calling her Amy, I don't know her like that, but do you think there was a backdrop that Justice Barrett probably walked into that she had nothing to do with? And the fact that she was just elected by Donald Trump just really tainted the appointment. What I'm trying to ask is, could it be that she actually gets to the Supreme Court and becomes impartial in the process? Is there a belief in America that is something that could potentially happen?
I don't think that she'll be impartial. That's the thing. I honestly, and it's not me being cynical or whatnot, I don't think that she will be very impartial just because of the fact her background. Right. It's been stated how she felt, and she's very conservative. So I think that will come into play when she's making certain decisions. Now, is it tainted like for the Democrats that are ready for their vote to vote against her? Absolutely. Actually, the last 3 justices that has been voted into the Supreme Court, I believe there was a little bit of it being tainted. Now, personally, I might be a little biased. I can see why there's some taint in that, because if you remember 4 years ago, the Republicans were in uproar when Obama wanted to put his nominee in, and the fact
they blocked it.
They blocked it, and the fact that 4 years later you're going to do the exact same thing you complained about 4 years ago, that's bull. I don't care. I call it how you see it. That is complete bull crap.
I wonder what Siobhan really thinks, Mike. I'd like an honest. Now, Siobhan, thank you for that answer. Give me your honest opinion now.
Unfiltered this time. Just say
unfiltered. It will be a lot more curse words, and I'm trying to be very professional.
That's very cool. I like that. Well, look, I mean, I'm fascinated by and please, Michael and Siobhan, please stop me when I need to. I'm losing track of time because this is one of the things I geek out on. I mean, as a former law student, I'm absolutely fascinated by the psychology of these so-called justices and people that are, close to God in a sense, because we believe them to be impartial or should be impartial and almost perfect. And I guess you are right. There's a sense that what was good for the goose is no longer good, or rather in reverse. What was not good for the goose is clearly good for the gander in this scenario, and some hypocrisy on the side of the Republicans. So it'll be intriguing to see if it does get to Supreme Court level, how that plays out, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to entertain the idea that Trump may not concede in my head because I think everything all my models just break apart when I do that, right? But yeah, in fact, I don't entertain it. Trump will concede because he I often say this, that Trump is kind of like a New York salesman. They say a lot of things. It's the last house, you got to get it now, or it's the last one, but they don't really mean it. So I'm just hoping these threats he's made about not conceding, telling white supremacists to stand back and stand by. I'm hoping, Siobhan, I know you're looking at me thinking, really, Mike? I'm hoping that doesn't happen, because if it does, I think it really does put America into a constitutional crisis a bit.
Let me just interrupt you there, Mr. MT, because I just think it would be interesting to play this from the perspective of Joe Biden. Do you legitimately also believe that whatever results come in the next couple of days or couple of weeks, that Joe Biden will concede?
2,200 votes, 15.4.
It depends on the post, and it does depend on the ballots, the post and ballots. But I do think Joe Biden would concede. He said that himself. He said in the campaign trail, they said, if you lose, would you concede? He said he would. It's Democratic convention to concede. They always concede because they always lose. But well, they lose. I mean, before Bar Clinton and Obama, they lost a lot. They're very good at losing. Kind of like the Labour Party, right? They're always winning arguments. They're always winning arguments, but they never win elections. Anyways, away from that. I want to hope that doesn't happen. Although I do want to ask something though, Siobhan, because you said you voted. I don't know if you said you voted by post, but even if you didn't, someone in the comments section said they voted by post weeks ago. I don't want to take this for granted here. Do you trust the postal voting system? Are you confident in it? Do you think there could be tampering? And does that affect how you think about this culture, this moment as well? Does it make the election seem a bit less kind of trustworthy for you?
Well, I like to preface this by this. I also may be a little biased. I am a product of parents who worked for the USPS Postal Service. That's how we ate.
Right.
All right, then.
That's a really good perspective, yeah.
But no, okay, so I'm a little bit of it was a double, I flipped back and forth. By the fact that my parents worked for the USPS Postal Service, I have saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of how people handle mail. So I wanted to go in and vote. That was my personal thing. I wanted to feel the ballot. I wanted to circle in. I wanted to physically inserted my ballot into the little ballot retriever thing and do it that way. However, I also say this. I mean, millions. I mean, that many times of the year, people put in their tax papers through the mail, and they get to the place perfectly fine. So I just think that you're going to have issues with the USPS because your mail, yours might be the one that's get lost. But there's also thousands and hundreds of thousands of ones that might get counted. It's one of those until it's not very, very assertive until you like see it. And even then, you physically do the mail go to the polling station too. There's no guarantee that there won't be any problems at the polling station either.
Yeah. It does seem, and I know we reported this again on our show Moving Parts. Again, if you're joining us, thank you for joining us for this coverage. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to turn your notifications. Join our community. If you want to find out a bit more about what we do, join.tcsnetwork.co.uk. You can find out what we do there. We did say that even before, weeks, months, even before the election, Trump was already preparing this postal ballot kind of excuse. It's almost as if he knew he would lose because, quite frankly, and we'll talk about this after the next breaking news segment, a lot of these promises, you have to remember that what Trump is really good at, and let's not forget, because it's easy to forget, isn't it? Trump is a game show host. That's probably the most successful thing he's done, right?
Wow.
Because the money he was given by his father, that little £10 million loan, had all the reports have shown us, had he left it somewhere safe, given it to some prudent investors, he would be richer than he is now. We know he owes money to, I don't know, the Chinese, who knows, right? But ultimately, he's a game show host. So he's the king of optics. We know this. For the last 4 years, we have not taken our eyes off him. However, in the next segment, we'll take a look at exactly what he's achieved these last 4 years. Build a wall, appoint Supreme Court justices, repeal the Affordable Care Act. We're going to take a forensic look at it and see, has he actually done these things? So because Trump knows he's failed on that, he's been getting the excuse ready early. So now we're seeing the maturity of all these old excuses. Just a few days ago, we found out that he might actually he confirmed it to what's that company, news company, I think, or media company that did an interview on him where he had the maps. Was it AOX or something like that?
HBO. Yeah.
HBO, because didn't they follow his plan to steal the election?
Right.
We're used to seeing this. So ultimately, the moment we're in is scary. It's different, but at the same time, this is a guy who's the king of the optics and sleight of hand and stuff like that. I don't trust him, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with Florida. They just came up again. They're really taunting us with Florida here. To report on West Virginia, Joe's ahead in West Virginia, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Shall we bring on Josh so we get some breaking news? Because there's so many different states coming in. I would love to find out what's happening now because I'm trying to keep Indiana. Donald Trump, of course, is ahead with 17% reporting. Is Josh around? Josh might be going, what? I've still got 1 more minute, Mike.
Look, I've accepted the chaos that is this election night. I'll tell you what, I've got 4 open. I've got Twitter, I've got New York Times, CNN, BBC.
Now we're getting into it. Let's go.
Okay, in terms of an overview. All right, so at the moment, the New York Times is saying that we have a current total of Biden's 16 electoral votes versus Trump's 13. So how that's come about is that Biden has taken Vermont, Trump has taken Indiana and Kentucky, as we talked about last time. West Virginia has gone to Trump, and Virginia has gone to Biden. So that's where we're at in terms of kind of solid projections. In terms of predictions, so this is where things get a little bit more interesting. The New York Times needle is moving towards Trump in 2 states where the Democrats thought they had a chance, but they kind of knew they didn't. We've got Georgia at 75% chance of going to Trump. So remember, this is where there's a hotly contested Senate race between Jamie Harrison and Lindsey Graham. And Jamie Harrison,
was making ground.
yeah, like he in terms of his fundraising, it was the biggest haul that a Senate race had ever seen. He was raising well over $100 million just for in over the whole cycle, just for a Senate race, which is virtually unheard of. And then we're seeing that North Carolina is actually leaning towards Biden, and New York Times is giving a 66% chance that goes to Biden. So remember, everyone, that even though Florida is most likely go to Trump, Florida is a necessary win for Trump. It is not a necessary win for Biden. There is no path that leads to the White House that doesn't include Florida for Trump. So Biden can lose this and 5 other swing states, and he's still fine. So
Still win. Yeah.
there's that. In terms of the other races, so we're seeing, remember that this isn't the only race going on. So it's not the presidential race isn't the only thing happening tonight. We have Senate races, we have House races. The Democrats are currently projected to take 36 and the Republicans on 31. Now remember, everyone is very much focused on the presidential race. That is a good thing to focus on. But if the Republicans maintain control in the Senate and McConnell comes
I'm losing you
back,
a bit here, Josh. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You're back.
Are we back? What was I saying just as I went?
You were just talking about Congress and then you left.
Okay, so in terms of the races, we have not only, am I still there? Yeah.
I can hear you. Yeah, you're good.
Brilliant. So in terms of the races, we don't only have the presidential race going on, we have the Senate race going on. And remember that if the Republicans, maintain control of the Senate and McConnell is back, McConnell has called himself the Grim Reaper of bills, right? Anything that the House Democrats have said to him over the past 4 years, and we're talking over 200 bills are sitting on his desk, he has not even given it a vote. Right. So when we're looking at Trump as a norm breaker and Trump as the guy who's kind of keeping America away from legislating and moving forward, really, people should be focusing on McConnell's role in all of this, because they're not even, even pretending to function as a democratic deliberative body in the Senate anymore. So really, even if Biden takes the White House, his agenda is dead in the water if McConnell is back. So it's not a very good sign for Democrats. Well, Democrats are less likely to win the Senate anyway, but if they don't win the Senate, then it's pretty much all over in terms of Biden's first term agenda.
Yeah, although he can sign a lot of executive orders and do things that way, but then the next president can just undo that pretty much with another signature as well. I mean, important to note that this is still very early hours. I feel like we have to punctuate whatever you say. With that, it's still very early hours, so we'll see what happens there. So let's talk a bit more about this whole. You said there were 2 states that were meant to go to, or they were looking like they would go to Biden, but now they're leaning Trump. How many reporting? So how many ballots have been counted so far? Do we have a kind of percentage of is it 17% reporting, 20%, so on and so forth?
So the states I mentioned, which were Georgia and Florida, are kind of the states that Democrats, I feel like in their hearts, knew they wouldn't win, but they hoped that there'd be some sort of miracle. So with Florida, we're looking, Biden has a 0.1% margin with 81% reporting. In Georgia, with 8% reporting, Trump is up 8 points. So again, Georgia is really, really early, so that could yet change. And again, remember, the difference between election day results versus the mail-in ballots being counted. So again, things may look very different in a week or so. Not necessarily with Florida, because Florida counts pretty much every vote on the same day, but with other states, we have different procedures.
Absolutely. Important to note as well what you said is so important there is, the Trump has very little routes to the White House, but every single route includes Florida. He must win Florida, and Florida's still a toss-up. It could go either way, so it's going to be very interesting to watch what happens there. Someone said it's wishful thinking to think that this is, I forget the name. I think the name is Liz Yongo, says it's wishful thinking to think Trump will concede nicely if he doesn't get Florida, if he doesn't win those 270 Electoral College votes. What do you think, Josh? I'm curious to say, I mean, do you think Trump will concede? Can you imagine a concession? Do you think he's written one? Important to note that Trump actually never wrote, Trump never wrote a winning speech. He didn't think he would win. In fact, it's famously reported that he was up in the 8th floor or something. Everyone else was on the 6th floor celebrating. And then when Trump looked like he was doing well, Ivanka calls him. Then he comes down the stairs. And then he's like watching, like stunned, like, what? I'm going to win? Right? So in a similar way, do you think he's become so obtuse that he probably hasn't even written a concession speech?
I think that knowing Trump, on a good day, he doesn't write a speech. So, you know, I wouldn't expect there to be a speech, even if he did think he was going to win. But in terms of the wider point of whether he's going to concede or not, he's made it very clear that he's going to fight this tooth and nail in the court. So the concession certainly isn't going to come election night or even when the election is called. This is going to be a battle that stretches all the way to the December deadline, which is somewhere between the 10th and the 20th. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but the election is not decided even once all the states are called. The election is decided when the Electoral College votes. So up until that deadline, up until the states have a deadline to send their electoral votes to their electors to Washington, who will then vote, it's still in play. This election isn't over, so it's still being, there are machinations in the background. And there were even reports that the Trump campaign was coordinating with some state legislators, because the state legislators will then appoint their electors, was colluding with the Republican majorities to then perhaps circumvent the popular vote. So that's a possibility. Trump is going to stretch every institution to its breaking point. If it breaks, he wins. If it doesn't, maybe there's some semblance of American democracy left. But again, it's all up in the air.
Very interesting. It seems as though this mature democracy that for so long has enjoyed this coveted position as the world's police and the moral beacon, conceptual beacon we must all look at, is slightly becoming undone. And it's odd that it's happening with Trump, right? The man who is going to make America great again. I mean, let's talk a bit about Trump now. As we have a segment where we bring on our public pundits. Our public pundits, right? These are folks who are members of our community who are going to get involved in this debate. We're going to bring Adam back on as well. So we're going to say bye to you for now, Josh. And we're going to bring on Adam and bring on D'Angelo. And we're going to talk a bit about what Trump has actually achieved. Because in many ways, as we've said, this is in many ways a referendum, isn't it, on Trump's kind of Trump's leadership. Remember, he had a lot of big claims when he was coming down those stairs. He started by saying Mexicans were rapists, and some of them were good people. That's what he said. So let's talk a bit about his legacy or what he's achieved in this first term. Because if he does win, that's the American people saying they want 4 more years. So Adam, you're here. D'Angelo, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself as well? And just tell us, guys, what do you think about Trump's first term?
Well, I'd actually refrain from calling it a referendum on Trump in this election. And I'll tell you for why, because it was the exact label that was used for 2018 in the midterm elections, that was the real referendum on Trump. What we saw, though, is in the House of Representatives, the Democrats gained 40 seats for the Republicans' losses, yet the Republicans not only won the Senate, they had a net gain of seats, and they won states like Indiana. They fought off hard contests across other states in the county. They fought off very hard congressional elections in Kentucky, in the 6th district, where Amy McGrath, who was an ex-Marine pilot, was definitely on the warpath of the Democrats. I think it's really important to remember that if Trump wins tonight, his handling of the economy, I think, will be one of the reasons why. He has done really, really well. On a lot of other issues, like I was talking about before, he hasn't done well at all. He's done awful. But I will refrain from calling it a referendum on Donald Trump, because every election that happens when an incumbent runs, be it Obama, the Bushes, Clinton, all the way going back to the first president to run again, it's always going to be, have they done well? No, okay, we'll focus on that.
Well, so just to pressure that, Adam, I do think this is slightly different though, because we're in a place right now where you've got 40,000 Americans in hospital. You've got over 240,000 dead. And so folks do think things could have been better than this. We had him saying in early February, March, that he knew this about the disease, right? That it was airborne. We had him saying he didn't want to panic people. So we have seen him make some very crucial decisions that have actually led to people, I would say, as exacerbated death or could have limited death. So in many ways, people are voting about what they think about Trump's leadership. Now, you're right. With most elections, that is the case. But surely you have to concede that here it's a bit more focused than it would have been in other elections, where you could argue that it's a confluence of things that's led to where we are right now. And when you say the economy, a part of me thinks, well, are you asking folks to think back to before COVID? Because right now, American economy is in tatters. It's in total tatters.
I would actually disagree with you there, because the latest figures in the American economy showed that GDP had gone and shot up by 30%, which is the highest GDP raise ever in American history. And that has happened during the coronavirus pandemic, which is obviously a bounce back from when GDP fell as a result of the start of the coronavirus pandemic. But I think, this is something that the Tory party ran on in 2015 when they took on Ed Miliband, is that you cannot have a strong health service, you cannot have a strong defence, you cannot have a strong welfare system without a strong economy. Because if you don't have the money to begin with, then you don't have anything to spend it on, because there's no money in the first place. So yeah. I think I think the economy has done. I mean, it certainly was doing much better pre-COVID. Regardless of whether we're talking about America or Papua New Guinea. Every single country has been affected by coronavirus. There's no one saying that hasn't. His handling of the economy, there was record employment and record low unemployment figures. Of course, this was pre-COVID, but even during COVID, that 30% raise in GDP, staggering unemployment, employment rise. What he wants to do is he wants to ensure that states are open to make sure that people are able to keep their jobs and keep to work. Now, that's not me defending Donald Trump, because I personally, as somebody who's worked in America a couple of times, I have actually weirdly this 14 stone prime Welsh beef from Manchester has been affected by the Trump tax bill, because as a somebody who took part in the Camp America scheme, I now have to pay taxes as a result of the Trump tax ban, the Trump tax bill. I have to pay taxes now. And I have to pay $92 in taxes, which is, I know it's $92 in the typical family.
It's criminal, Adam. It's criminal.
To be honest, it's just flipping stupid. But I'm not going to say anything else about that. But the idea of me paying taxes after working there for about 8 weeks, I just think is ridiculous. But that's saying that, I know a lot of people who have done very well. I know a lot of people who have not benefited from it.
Yeah,
I've gotten to know a lot of the families over these last 4 years, and for me, although I think that Trump has, like I said, he's done well on the economy, and I'm glad to see that he is. When we leave the European Union, obviously we've already left, but when we leave the transition agreement at the end of the year, I do believe that we'll get a trade deal with America, and I'm happy to put that on the record.
Just hold on to that, because there's been a lot in the news about if we have a Biden presidency, that might mean that this whole special relationship has to be renegotiated. I wonder, D'Angelo, what you think about that, because you're pro-Biden, aren't you?
I am pro-Biden, yes.
Okay. So what are you making of everything that we're talking about today so far?
So, I respectfully have to disagree with Adam on it not being a referendum on Trump. And the reason why I would say that, alongside your reasons, are that if you consider the fact that, let's be honest, Trump is right. Biden is Sleepy Joe. He's not a charismatic person.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have to also consider that Trump is this all-engulfing persona. And really and truly, what we have here is Trump versus somebody who's quite silent and somebody who's not actually got much of character out there. And that's what Americans are when they first start looking at things, what they drift towards. And that's why I think it really is a yes for Trump or no for Trump. And that just happens to be Joe Biden as the other person. And to consider in regard to the economy, I think you have to look at the facts of if Trump handled COVID badly, he handled the economy badly. Like, he could have done better. We've seen other countries do better, and they are feeling the pain from that. I also saw you mention something about regaining the GDP shooting up by 30%. It went down by a higher percentage. So really and truly, he's not even back onto par to where he should have been before. And my thing about the economy that Trump loves to talk about is that the economy was actually progressing under Obama at the last stages of his administration. And for me, that is a bit difficult to then try and give that all to Trump. Yes, he did. He has done quite well, and we've seen the American economy do well. However, I'm a little bit skeptical of attributing that all to Trump. However, I would like to say his biggest triumph is probably the fact that he's got Americans voting. He's got Americans thinking about voting.
Engagement.
He is such a Marmite character that it is just crazy that you're hearing people across the globe, across the world talking about it. And probably a lot of the youth who can't vote right now are becoming interested in politics due to him just being such a Marmite character. You either love him or you hate him. And I think...
Right, so on that, D'Angelo, I want to bring in Junior, who again is actually a business development manager at Common Sense. I want to hear what he has to say because Junior is disagreeing with all of you. So Junior, what do you make of what's being said here?
Yeah, I disagree because one of the main reasons is if Obama, for example, was a Republican, do you think his character would have won him an election? So now let's compare Obama being a Republican and Trump being a Democrat and put them against each other in an election. Who do you think being a charismatic character would then influence the person winning the election? So who do you believe is going to win that particular contest? Because let's not forget that Donald Trump is not a career politician. So I'm very neutral on this. And Biden has been doing this job for 46 years. Mm-hmm. So, and the Democrat Party know what they are doing, and they know the reasons why they put forward Joe Biden, because you already have the support of Barack Obama and all the campaign behind Barack Obama, which means what Hillary Clinton didn't receive, because Hillary Clinton didn't receive an Obama or a Michelle appearing in videos campaigning for them. They did support Clinton overall, but it's the same way you're seeing how, for example, you could compare this in relation to as well for what Obama has achieved in his administration, and as well regarding to the economy, because it is impartially true that America was recovering like every part of the world. Everybody was recovering from the economic crisis. It was not a doing of actions or of laws that Obama has done that was making...
Hold on. So are you saying post the 2008 financial crisis, Obama had didn't have a part to play in America coming back from the brink?
No, he did have a part to play, but all over the world, the whole world was recovering. It wasn't a special act that Obama put in place, or a special obviously as a head of state, you do have to do something in terms of recovering the economy.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me bring in D'Angelo on this, because I know he might just explode. So go D'Angelo, and then we'll come back to Adam, and then I want to talk a bit more about some of the promises he made. You know, some people say promises made, promises kept. I want to talk a bit about that, but go on, D'Angelo.
So I think Adams literally touched on it, and in the just below, in regards to Obama's personality is amazing. He is a talker, and I think even you kind of said it as well. This is in relation to your first question, where you spoke about Obama, if Obama was a Republican and Donald Trump was a Democrat. I think if you had when you see him at these rallies for Biden, and the whole fact of the whole Obama effect, in that they've literally shifted him down to Florida to be there twice because they know that state is so important. I think that just goes to show how important Barack Obama's personality is, and I still think he would have beaten Trump. Yes, Trump is not a career politician. However, he doesn't evoke the confidence or have the charisma. When Obama starts speaking, you start listening. Trump doesn't necessarily have that. He just has words and sound bites that you take and you're like, all right, okay, all right, let's see where you're trying to go with this one, and and stir a headline. I think, again, as well, for me personally, I can't see Trump being ever considered a successful president. Just to go back to your point, the promises he's tried to keep in regards to building that wall. How much of that wall has been built? Not even half of it. I think I think one of the main things I think that I see in regards to that will be the legacy of Trump is the fact that he's solidified the conservative majority in the Supreme Court, and I think that will linger into Biden's actual presidency, because obviously, as you guys have spoken about, he can only really sign executive orders without going to the Supreme Court and getting their ratification.
Unless, of course, he floods the court, which we don't know if he's going to do yet. Yeah. But let's go to Adam. Adam, what do you make of this? Because you're looking into the sky, collecting points, I imagine, like Infinity Stones. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I wish I could get some Infinity Stones right now and we can just sort the world out. But unfortunately, we live in this captive moment that is Florida, where we have just 10% of votes left to count, and Trump is leading by about 2.5%, with 10% of the votes left to count in traditionally Republican areas. So it is interesting, but there's just so much to consider in this. Obama, I do agree with what D'Angelo said. Obama had an amazing personality. I'm going to be honest, I'm not actually a fan of his speaking style. I don't know if anyone else notices. He does speak rather slow, pauses in the middle. It's almost like he's buffering on a really bad internet connection, isn't it? But Britain is very popular. Britain is very popular towards Obama. He has a great approval rating in the UK, in the US. I think there is a huge amount of things to consider when it comes to Obama. I agree with your earlier point, D'Angelo, as well, when you were talking about the economy under Obama. But I also agree the fact that there was, just as there is a global pandemic, the fault of the pandemic is not with Donald Trump just as much as it's not with Boris Johnson, or it's not with Emmanuel Macron. There's just it's been a problem everywhere. Just like in 2009 with the global recession, the Conservative Party back in the UK hammered Gordon Brown, and it was Gordon Brown didn't hold the recession. And not to swing off the point, but obviously Obama, there was certainly some economic recovery under Obama and under the Democrats. There's no denying that. But obviously we saw that continue recovery under Trump. There's certainly been a little bit more red tape around regulations. For every regulation that Donald Trump introduced, he cut and he abolished 2 regulations, which was sort of the kind of non-binding contract that he had with the libertarian side of the Republican Party. Which of course makes not really much sense, because Donald Trump isn't a libertarian. He's in favor of tariffs. He's not in favor of free trade. He's not really a big free marketeer. He's very much America first, which often doesn't mean, in fact, to be honest, being a globalist is more being realistic and outward looking among the world and reaching out and gaining these free trade agreements. It doesn't necessarily mean smashing the country that you love. But I think, going back to my earlier point as well about how Trump and whether this is a referendum on Donald Trump or not, there is no denying that he has, like I said, on the economy and other areas that he's not done. But what I'm interested to see is how the silent minority, the silent majority that is in favor of Trump. The fact is if somebody rang you up and you were a very passionate Trump supporter or a very passionate Biden supporter and asked who you're voting, the chances are is you would say Biden or Trump. But if you are in a not so passionate Trump supporter or more reluctant, you may be more reluctant to tell a news poll. You may be reluctant, and that is where the silent votes sort of creep in. So the polls could say 8%. But if you switch between, you know, what if you add 1 or 2% on to Trump's total and take away that from Biden, you've then got only a 4% lead, which is then within the margin of error, and that's when you start to come down a lot of things. So I mean, for me, as somebody who probably would have favoured Donald Trump in 2016, I would very much prefer Joe Biden to win tonight, because I've seen what he's been like as a president. I've got to know a lot of people. You know, I'm looking at the state of Ohio, and I know all the counties on here because I've got friends who live there and I've worked there, and all these such things. And it's really interesting to see what they're voting on television.
Yeah.
But I genuinely, and I think looking at Florida, you know, the lead at the moment there could indicate that Trump is re-elected tonight.
Well, I have a lot I want to say to that, but then we don't have time.
A lot to digest.
No, because we must talk a bit, I guess, just before we hear some news from Josh about what's happening, and no doubt he'll speak a bit about Florida too, about, you know, what Trump's legacy actually is. I mean, it's hard to get to the fact with Trump because, of course, you know, I think this is an objective truth. Is I don't think there's been a president that lies as much as Donald Trump lies.
That's something too. That is something.
I feel sorry for the fact checkers who, after every speech, they're just out of breath. The poor souls, you know, on CNN or whatever it is, just trying to correct everything he was saying. But you know, you said some things that I think is important for folks who are listening to us to really take heed to. One of the big Trump promises, of course, was to build a wall. He promised to build 1,000 meters or 1,000 miles. Sorry, he's only managed about 372 so far. That's a failed promise.
Yeah.
Of course, he said he would appoint conservative judges. That's probably something he's done pretty well because about 25% of judges now are conservative. When you think about the federal judiciary, so he's done pretty well there. He spoke about repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare.
Okay. Yeah.
We're still waiting for his
Yeah.
plan. We haven't seen that. Of course, he spoke about cutting taxes. And of course, yes, we saw him cut quite a few taxes. Not for the right group of people, the Democrats would say, but he cut the taxes nonetheless. So he also spoke about renegotiating trade deals, which he did do. He opened.
He did, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, whether they're good. Now, the truth is that the jury is still out on whether it's with better or worse terms, or if it's with good enough terms for you to give them a win for that. But ultimately, here's the point I want to make just before we bring on Josh is I want to get from you guys, if you had to grade, if you like, Donald Trump's performances over these past 4 years, what would you grade him? And, you know, and why? And literally in a sentence, because I want to get you all in before we bring Josh back on.
I mean, I take it we're not talking like 2 1s and 2 2s. We're going with an A star and F.
No.
Do you know what?
We're not doing numbers neither. I want you to tell me like an A star, an A, a B. And remember, 1 sentence, please.
Do you know what? I'm going to go with D. I think there's certainly room for improvement. And I think there is such a lack of what was promised at the start, which he needs to work on if he's re-elected.
Did you say a D?
I said a D. I think
you're pretty tough, aren't you?
I am. I'm going to be tough. I think he's made, you know, like we were talking before, and I know I've gone over my sentence, but the promises made, promises kept. There's a lot of stuff that he has just not followed through on. Healthcare was such a flagship Republican policy going into 2014 in the midterms, 2016. They had 2 years in a Republican House to fix it up, and him and Paul Ryan got together, hammered out a plan, and it was just an absolute failure. And for that, I think that has to go for a D because of the flagship failure of a health policy.
That's fair. Yeah, Angelo, what do you think?
So I'm gonna be a bit sneaky here, and I'm gonna split it into 2. I'm gonna give him a D for his first half. I wasn't too bad, nothing special, but I'm gonna give him a U for the second half. I think socially, America's been pulled to pieces. I think a lot of unification that needs to happen in America. You know, just even in regards to his impeachment, that's crazy. Then you've also got
oh yes.
What happened last year? What happened this year? Which feels like last year in regards to the Black Lives Matter protests and Antifa and Proud Boys. We've got that. And lastly, you know, just what is it? COVID, anti-maskers, and or wearing your mask. America's divided over so many different issues, and I think he has to take some of the brunt for that.
Fair. And what about you, Junior?
I think like he would have been a good, not a president, maybe a vice president to someone, or
Donald
maybe
Trump as a vice president.
he would have,
Really good words.
or maybe let's just say in the UK politics, he would have been a good foreigner secretary or home secretary or something like that. You know, because he's more like someone who implements instead of, you know, trying to keep everything together. I think that is where he failed. He didn't keep America together. So, for example, now COVID-19, we needed a global leader. Obama would have been a very good global leader in directing COVID-19 and making sure all the world leaders work together. For example, that is where Donald Trump can't do. He can't do something like that, but he can obviously sign a trade deal in 1 month. No other leader signed trade deal in 1 month. Only Trump can do that. It takes Europe to negotiate. It takes Europe 20 years to negotiate a trade deal with Brazil, but Donald Trump can do that in 3 weeks. So, I think that is, to be sincere, like putting together the first 2 years of, you know, trying to impeach him, and then the second 2 years of, you know, the final 1 year, let's just say the final.
I must say,
9
Junior,
months.
you have gone over your one sentence mark.
I think
That was my fault. Apologies about that.
I will give him, let's just say, probably 6.5. I'm being very generous, but I think.
Hold on, did you just say 6.5? That's not the standardized grading system we've gone for.
Okay, so that would be a C. That would be a C. That would be a C.
Right, I've got to let you guys go because we've got some new guests coming in, but also we've got Josh coming to give us some breaking news. So please, we'll stick around because we're definitely gonna get you back on. But thank you so much for that, and I'm gonna invite on Josh to just come and give us a bit of breaking news. Josh, are you there?
I am indeed. Can you see me?
I can see you, and that wonderful sunshine image behind you.
It is the hope for us all. It is perhaps what America could look like, depending on who you're voting for. So,
Right.
at the moment, in terms of overall results, we're seeing Biden at 85 electoral votes versus Trump at 55 electoral votes. So Biden has taken Massachusetts, he has taken Delaware, DC, Maryland, New Jersey, Illinois, I've said New Jersey, Connecticut and Virginia. Trump has taken Oklahoma, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee. So not very surprising results at the moment. What is surprising is at the moment that Ohio is Biden plus 14 with 40% reporting, and Biden has a lead over Trump in Ohio's Delaware County, which has not gone to a Democrat since 1916. So we're talking 104 years of Republican stronghold being obliterated by Biden currently with only 40% reporting still, so it could change.
It is worth noting, it is his home state, right? So there's a kind of nuance to it.
What, Ohio?
Delaware, you mentioned Delaware.
Yeah, so he's taken Delaware. Right. In Ohio, he's obliterated.
I apologize. I misheard you.
No worries.
Then I'm not here, Josh. Just do whatever the heck you want. Thank you.
It's all up in the air. It's all a mess at the moment. Don't worry. But yeah, as I was saying, he's taken a county that no Democratic challenger has taken in 104 years. So this could be a sign of what's to come. At the moment, in terms of the swing states, we're seeing that Florida is definitely going for Trump. That was called a long time ago. What's interesting about Florida and what they found is that the reason why Biden nationally and in swing states has been seeing this surge in the polls is because of his ability to win over senior voters. So Trump's basic coronavirus strategy, and one of the theories is that Trump has been out on the campaign stage going, you know, only young people will survive, the old people will die, it's all fine, right? And old voters have been like, wait, hold on a minute, buddy, all right, you're not getting my vote. So seniors have been fleeing Trump. But then in Florida, what we've been seeing is that instead of what you'd expect with the minority vote in terms of Republicans losing minority votes, we're seeing that Trump has increased his share of the Latino vote, and Biden has pretty much lost the wide margin that Hillary Clinton had and Obama had with the Latino community. Now, one of the main messages that the Trump campaign has been trying to push about Biden is that he is a Trojan horse for the left, as it were. That as soon as he gets in, really, it's going to be Bernie Sanders behind the scenes, controlling everything. And it hasn't resonated in any other part of the country. In fact, Biden's favorables have gone up during the campaign, which is virtually unheard of in a political campaign, that you would be seen more favorably as your opponent paints you as the most vicious, awful person that exists. But with the Latino community, especially in Florida, who are coming from socialist countries like Cuba, and have experiences with socialism, whether that is, we term true socialism or just dictatorships, perhaps that message is resonating. And that's the reason why, essentially, that Trump has been able to take Florida. So Biden has been getting margins that he's wanted to get across counties in Florida, except in Miami. Trump has actually been able to, although Biden has won Miami, Trump was able actually to increase his margins. So this messaging that Biden is this Trojan horse could have worked in Florida overall.
No, it's interesting. You talk about the Hispanics and Trump's favor in that kind of demographic. One of the things that a lot of people have alluded to, in the lead up to the election, is the fact that there's a sense from the Hispanics and other minorities that, well, look, if we let more people in, which is essentially they come in and take these jobs that we are currently occupying. So in some ways surprising, but not. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the course of the evening there, Josh. Anything else that you think, okay, we need to keep an eye on, we need to watch out for, before I segue into letting my guests in, because I've got a really, really intriguing topic coming up, which I think, quite frankly, is 50-50 depending on who you are.
What I would just quickly say is that Mitch McConnell is back. He has soundly the Grim Reaper of bills, as he calls himself. Is back. Nobody expected him to lose. He was routinely 10 points ahead of his Democratic challenger. In terms of the Senate race, we've got 42 Democrats confirmed versus 34 Republicans. So perhaps we see a Senate that goes to the Democrats, because again, like I was saying before, without the Senate, the Democratic agenda is dead in the water. But I'll let you get on to your guest, because I'm also very much looking forward to the next segment on foreign policy. So
really appreciate that, Josh. Just sorry to break your word there, but also key, and you've been very good at just keeping that in focus for us, is this other race or other races playing out, in the backdrop that we need to be aware of. And you're right, despite whoever wins the White House, you actually need the House, Congress and Senate, effectively to roll out your agenda. We saw how Trump really struggled with having a Democratic Congress, and of course he had the benefit of Republican Senate, but there was always this tussle in terms of whether the stimulus package, whether it's a bill he's trying to push through. There's always that second level of that of support that you really need to kind of win people over. So very good. Thank you for keeping us posted, Josh. Really appreciate it. The updates are coming in thick and fast. Really appreciate it, mate. And coming up, while we just let our guests in to give everybody else a sense, this next segment I'm particularly excited about. Again, it's one of those things I geek about, but it has to do with foreign policy and Trump's track record in that respect. So we'll see how that goes in a short while. As you can see, there's President Trump with President Xi of China, which is a huge point of contention and discussion in itself. So I've got some guests coming on, and they should be joining me any moment now. If they can just come and step up, and we can have a quick chat about this. Also, just to note, folks, really appreciating the comments that are coming through there. Keep them coming. We love to see it. Someone says Trump will win. Just saying. My gut is telling me Trump may win, and my heart is with Biden. That's from Marion as well. So keep the comments coming. Really, really appreciate it. Fantastic. So I should have my guests popping up. Taj and Will. And we're going to be talking about Trump's foreign policy agenda and whether it has been really successful, and perhaps what role it will play in this election result. Will people look at that and think, wow, we have a really strong president, we have a really competent president who's done a great job, and therefore, let's make sure he gets back into office. That remains to be seen. Wonder if my guests are here or if they're struggling to log on. But let's have a look and see if they are ready. Are you guys there, Will? Are you there, Taj?
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
All right. Good to see you guys. Welcome. Mate, how are you feeling so far as we wait for Will to just jump on? Talk to us about how you're reading the evening, basically.
Well, I mean, I've been enjoying the debate so far. Listening to people's different stories, people's predictions about what's going to happen. And I think it's very interesting to stay up and to just listen to, what people think, really. And obviously, I heard some people say that this is a referendum on Trump and a referendum on the pandemic itself as well. So I feel like, that adds another dimension to it. And I'm just willing to see where that takes us, really.
Yeah, man, that's interesting. And Will, good to have you, mate. Welcome.
Cheers.
We're going to talk about something that I'm passionate about. And just before we get to it, your sense on, the evening, how it's going so far, just how you're feeling.
Oh, it's fascinating, really. I was sitting here thinking, agreeing with, I think, a poster earlier saying that if Florida goes blue, it's game over. And it's looking like it may well stay red, which means it might be worth staying up for, which is interesting at any rate. But yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. I've been enjoying the coverage. It's going to be an interesting one either way. I see everywhere has been boarding up their stores all over Washington and town centers and whatnot. So we'll see what happens both tonight and later.
Yeah, no, chaps. Well, look, let's get to it because I really love, I guess, this. Let's take it outside of America for a moment because let's start at the beginning. Trump came in and there was this whole notion of, you can't give the nuclear codes to this guy. And this was, a huge kind of point of debate, whether you like it or not, that, Republicans and anti-Trump people put, you can't give them nuclear codes. We're going to be in war with North Korea in no time, etc. We didn't see that. We've seen Trump meet some of these dictators. He met Kim Jong-un. We saw Trump move the U.S. embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. We saw Trump broker, whether you like it or not, some significant peace deals in the Middle East. We've seen Trump in his dealings with China. We've seen him hang out with the Russian president or dictator, whatever you want to call it. How would you, and I'll start with you, Taj, how would you look at the Trump foreign policy scorecard and how would you rate that?
Well, we can go to a lot of stories about that. For me personally, I'd say, if I'll be honest, 7.5 out of 10, really.
Wow, that's a pretty high rating as far as I'm concerned. And why would you say that?
Well, I mean, let's look at North Korea, for example. Obviously, if you look at previous presidents, you could say that there was a bit of fear in how to deal with them. So obviously, the way they carry themselves, across the globe, it was a bit like, just leave them alone. They're very dangerous. At any point now they could, just launch a nuclear attack. But Trump came in and was like, you know what, I'm staring this face on, and I'm not surprised really because as Mike said earlier, this guy is essentially a game show host. He is he's a reality TV star, as it were. So at any point where he can put himself in front of the limelight and just change the dynamic. Really, he will do it, and that's what he did with North Korea. So he got himself into a position to broker some sort of peace deal, or however you want to say it, with North Korea. And he sat down with Kim Jong-un and said, look, we could actually make a relationship out of this. And he was brave enough to step out of the comfort zone of the US and go for that peace deal. And obviously that's just one thing. And if you look at the deal that he brokered between Israel and Bahrain, something that you would never expect, really. Obviously, because Israel are going on having their own issues really at the moment, and he's caused, well, he's actually helped to broker that peace deal as well. So I feel like he's done, like, in terms of the foreign policy department, he's done quite well for himself, really.
Well, that's a, like I said, a very good score, 7.5 out of 10. I'd be happy to get a score like that for anything. Will, just your sense of President Trump's approach to his foreign policy, and maybe in the next layer of question you can answer this one. How do you think that will fare, or will play a role in people's perception of him in this election process?
Yeah, cheers. So foreign policy traditionally hasn't been a massive vote swinger in American elections. Right. It's the economy, stupid, largely, right, as the saying goes. But you got to remember, Trump was elected first time round on an America First policy card. It was, right, one of his priorities from day one. And looking at his foreign policy record, I'll have to agree with Taj. We're in danger of having a boring segment in which we both agree. I think he's done really quite well. I mean, he's right. North Korea, he's the only US president to ever meet a North Korean leader. North Korea's had 4 nuclear missile tests since 2015, and I don't think any of them have been since he threatened North Korea with fire like the world has never seen before. So, but Trump's the sort of man who prides himself on going into meetings unprepared, because he feels like if he doesn't know what he's going to say, nor's the guy on the other side of the table. So he's a bit of a rock and roll diplomat as well as a game show host. And so I think he's done well with North Korea. I think there's a lot of nuance to be had in some of the other areas. I think he's perhaps inconsistent on some of his lines. China, he's buddy 1 minute and then he's tariff the next. But he is, that's his big point right now, isn't it? Especially with the coronavirus, the China virus. What was it? One of his aides called the Kung flu. They're really trying to link this to China here, and China is the next big thing. I think if Trump gets elected again, that is the hill he's going to die on. So I think I'd like to hear more about what you guys think about his record on China.
Yeah, well, that's intriguing. It's intriguing that you say that. You mentioned a very good point there about how it's very inconsistent. And one might argue, surely that's reckless for a president to approach that kind of diplomacy. The whole notion of foreign policy has to do with tact. You've got to be strategic in how you manage certain relationships. I don't know if you remember early on in his presidency, he actually, in fact, he just won, and he took a phone call from the leader in Taiwan. And if you know anything about America's previous approach to Taiwan, essentially is that they did not recognize it as an independent state. But it's that kind of reckless approach that I think, maybe you guys are being a bit too kind to him in a sense. I don't know. Is that wise for a head of state? Wouldn't you want somebody responsible at the helm? And just to bring it home, American home for a second, you talk about, how it's not really been a vote swing. In essence, people don't really vote on that. However, people have voted on that because they've really adopted this America First approach. Joe Biden himself has been a huge advocate and in turning around his very own strategy in terms of, we're going to build back better, but build back American. My first question, is it not reckless for a head of state not to really have a game plan when it comes to foreign policy? And secondly, maybe Taj, you could start us off on this one, is, what would you like to how do you anticipate America, should Trump lose, would approach his foreign policy going forward?
Well, so are you essentially asking how I predict Biden will go about with his foreign policy?
Yeah, if he wins, yeah.
Well, let's start with China. I feel like, obviously, at the moment, there's unilateral tariffs on China, so I think Biden would remove that. Because I'm just guessing from the way he is with his policies, he would remove that unilateral tariff. So obviously right now, obviously that's causing a problem on Chinese products, and it's not really helping, as we've said. Trump, referring to the virus as a Chinese virus, or someone from his administration calling it the Kung flu. So of course now that's dampening relations between China and the US, and it's kind of making them seem like they're less formidable in a way, less more inferior, if you will. So perhaps in a way, Biden coming into office will be like a breath of fresh air for China, and perhaps that's what they need, really. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, your perspective on that, do you think Biden will soften his approach towards China and perhaps reverse some of the gains that Trump's made? Will?
I think Biden will try to go back on some of Donald Trump's foreign policy lines. I think China might be a case of the Rubicon already being crossed. I think that it might already be too late for China. I mean, if we just look at the numbers, from the early 1990s to today, China's military has increased by some 800%, which is the biggest peacetime increase in military spending the world has ever seen.
Right.
So I think that China is, maybe a problem that's actually been swept under the carpet by a lot of presidents for a very long time. And now it's gotten so big and so scary. It spends, more on the military than the rest of Asia combined. It steals billions and billions of dollars worth of American intellectual property every year. It carries out economic terrorism, where it gets developing countries, gives them massive loans for infrastructure projects, and then calls them in return for political capital. I think we can really see another, Cold War almost developing. They're the enemy ahead. But in terms of what Biden might change, perhaps the Iran deal might be one of the key ones, because this is one of the areas in which Trump really does appear to be standing alone against his European allies. He obviously left the Iran nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions, which his European allies didn't agree with. Ironically, this is probably what's led to the deals in the Middle East, because he's seen as a man who's strong enough to sort out the Iranian threat. But I think Biden might want to take a step back on that one, as hard as it may be, seeing as the US has just annihilated their military leader. And I think also his stance on Brexit as well. I think it was mentioned earlier in the programme. Biden was part of the Obama administration, back of the queue, Barack, who said that Britain simply wouldn't be in line for a trade deal. Trump reckons we will. Biden's probably going to take a step back, especially given his Irish heritage, his support for the Good Friday Agreement and all that. So in some areas, I do agree there's likely to be a diplomatic rollback on some of Trump's policy areas if Biden is elected.
Now, I want to just segue into talking about, the coronavirus linked to his foreign policy and linked to potentially how Americans have viewed this and whether that'll influence them as they vote. One of the things that Trump did early on was he reckoned the World Health Organization, that's who it was. He reckoned these chaps and China have conspired. To heck with it, we're leaving the WHO and we're going to set our own course. That to me screams of it's slightly overly dramatic. I don't know, but how do you view that to be playing a role in, I guess, how people are thinking, Americans particularly, in going to the poll? The WHO is a world-respected body that countries all over the world are relying on their guidance and lead in dealing with the global pandemic. Here you got Trump, who literally pulled the plug on it and said, we're not giving you any more money. You guys and China got us into this. How do you see that playing out? We'll start with you, Will, and then we'll move to Ty.
Yeah, sure. I think it's in line with his America First policy, really. We've seen him pull out of much more than the WHO, UNESCO.
Right.
He's left the Paris Climate Accords. He's also departed from because he doesn't feel like it totally fits with his policies. So I don't think it'll be anything new to an American voter seeing that. I don't think it'll change their mind at all. With WHO in particular, I think it's funny actually that people are imagining it as this great sort of arbiter of wisdom, and they're laying down the right path to deal with the virus. They've recently come out saying they don't believe in lockdowns, but it seems like all of the Western world is going back into them. So maybe Trump just had jumped the gun on us.
No, fair, but I mean, surely, that's a way. Like the virus, it's we're learning about it as we go along, quite literally. There's no way of knowing. For example, in March, there was no way of legitimately knowing whether lockdowns would be effective or not. It was just a kind of a panic button measure. Would you not say that's quite a bit of a harsh assessment of the WHO?
I think it's fine to hit a panic button once. I think if you're hitting it twice, then something's gone wrong. I think that the Swedes are managing with 0 presses so far, so we'll have to see.
Tad, your view on this, on the WHO, Trump's approach to it and his treatment of COVID?
Yeah, I'd echo what Will said. So obviously, I feel like it's first and foremost a case of Trump trying to exercise autonomy over America.
Right.
He's come into office and he said, "Look, I'm putting America first." That's what he did with obviously building the wall, for example. Obviously, he's not really finished, but he said to himself, "Look, I'm putting us first." Obviously, in his mind, he said that the Mexicans were coming in, and obviously that was driving the drug market and the drug trade. Obviously, he did the same thing with China. So obviously, making sure he put his troops first, and obviously the military first as well. And now with the WHO as well, he's obviously come out of that and said, "Look, I'm gonna rely on my own accord, essentially." And obviously, I guess you see elements of that in our Prime Minister Boris Johnson as well. Obviously, initially deciding not to listen to Sage, and now all of a sudden listening to Sage. So I don't want to go as close as saying it's kind of appearing to be dictatorish, or just a way of kind of asserting power and authority, just to not seem incompetent. I'm not saying that Trump is incompetent, but he's trying to just have control, just to.
Well, listen, you're free to say whatever you want. He's not going to come for you.
Yeah. I just don't want to fall into the trap of just echo, being one of those people in the echo chamber, just saying random.
Right.
Yeah, I mean he's done quite well in some respects, but obviously in other respects he's been an absolute mess. So. If I'm being real, I think it's long story short, I think it's a case of him just trying to appear competent, really. At least with the last few months or so, as well.
Yeah, look. You both raised some really interesting points. One thing for sure, and one thing that stands out to any sensible person, whether they follow politics or not, is that he's not been a conventional, president in relation to other countries. Bringing in his son-in-law Jared Kushner to broker some of these deals and as a strategic advisor, whether that's a plus or not. Some might say, yeah, it's worked for him. Whether that's seen as nepotism, again, some might say, well, you're allowed to appoint whomever you please. I just think ultimately, and we have a minute, just 30 seconds from you both. How are you calling this election evening? How do you see the results coming out? Who do you think is going to sit in that Oval Office in the coming days? Very quickly, before we jump back to Josh with our news update. Will, your prediction, and then we'll end up with Taj.
Well, as I said at the start, I think as Josh mentioned earlier, it's all about the swing states. Biden can win many ways. Trump needs, several states to fall the way he wants them to. And it's looking like they might, I think it's not as big of a gap as there was last year. Sorry, not last year, yesterday rather. I think predictions were a bit heavily pro-Biden. I think Trump has a chance, a small chance, but that's what we all said in 2016. So let's wait and see.
Right. If you were in America today, Will, who would you vote for? Let me put it that way.
I'd vote for Donald Trump.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Just 10 seconds. I'm already late. Josh is upset with me, but it's fine. 10 seconds.
I'd vote for Donald Trump because I don't think Biden's competent. I think that what's likely to happen is that a year or two in, he's going to be 80 years old. He's going to forget where he is. He's going to either be pushed or step down. And America's going to have an unelected leader or a semi-elected leader for a couple of years. Whereas I think with Trump, at least, we know what we're getting. It's not
so with Trump, you're basing that on age. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it. Let's maybe
not purely on age.
Well, yeah, just give me something meaty. Fair. We concede, and maybe Taj, you might disagree. Sleepy Joe might be called sleepy for a reason. We can get to that. But give me something meaty. I'm pushing the time here, but let's play around with it because I'm intrigued by that perspective.
Yeah, no, sure. Several reasons, really. As I said, I think his foreign policy is pretty spot on. I think the special relationship is quite important. I think as an Englishman, that's probably me being biased there. Maybe I wouldn't think so if I was an American, but I think Biden wants to tear that up. I think in terms of domestic policy, he could do with a few more years there. And I'm also incredibly worried, actually, constitutionally about the ramifications if Biden gets in and tries to do what FDR tried to do in the 1930s and pack the Supreme Court full of judges.
Right.
He tried to do it in the 30s and failed. If Biden succeeds, that could really rip up the Constitution as we know it, with there being, because there's nothing in there that says there has to be 9 judges. So he might try to make it 90 judges and, reverse the conservative line there. And the ramifications that might have for American politics will reverberate for longer than we'll be around.
I'm not sure he will be able to get 90 judges through, but it is a good point. He's come out and been very open about their desire to potentially put forward a motion that begins a process like that. He left it till quite late. Interesting there from Will, who would vote for Donald Trump. Taj, your perspective, who would you vote for? You were in America today. You had the ability to vote. You were an American citizen. Which horse are you backing?
First of all, I like to make it clear that in the terms of Biden and Trump, it's about choosing between the lesser of two evils.
Right.
Really. So obviously, I mean, we know how controversial Trump is and the things he's said over the years, things he's done even. Like he's not even been impeached for it, and I'm like, that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, obviously, like having said that, let's not forget his competency. Like he can be competent.
Right.
I won't discredit that. Having said that, as I said, choosing between lesser of two evils. So I'd say Biden, because just looking at the things that Trump has done and said and has gotten away with, it just makes me think.
Like what? Give me some examples that you're like, this is an outrage.
Well, I mean, so things. There's racist remarks he's made. A few years ago, when there was talk about white supremacists and the KKK, and he never made clear his stance about Black Lives Matter and that he wasn't endorsing white supremacists. He was never clear at that time when he was asked about it. And even let's suppose that he wasn't endorsing him with the white supremacists. He could have made that clear, And it's a thing where
so race relations is pretty high for you, I guess, in just how Trump has managed, America during this delicate time, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, but obviously not to be biased just because I'm Black, obviously. But I mean, I think for me, obviously, something like that, obviously that's a very big social policy, and I feel like if we're having a president or like obviously someone we look up to, the leader of the free world, it can't be someone who is taking these things for granted and feels like he can just run off the rails essentially. So we have to be careful with who we put into the highest office in the world, as it were.
Well, real quick, I know I keep saying this, but you guys just keep on saying really interesting things. Your take on just Trump's race relations and how he's managed that, because you can't negate the fact that there've been some really significant pivotal moments where people have looked on in America and said, look, George Floyd has been killed. What's the president saying about that? Just your perspective on how Trump's managed race relations.
He's almost in a lose-lose, I think. Trump is president right now in the middle of what is a massive culture war. I think there's very little he could say that would both appease the BLM crowd and also retain him in the presidency, because he needs to keep his core voters. I mean, look how Florida's going right now. It's so tight, everything's so tight. I mean, he probably has been lacking at times. I think the George Floyd incident picked up particular momentum because it was during the COVID crisis, obviously right at the start. But yeah, I mean, I feel for America right now, truly, to be honest with you. I think that the fact that, shops are being boarded up, people are accusing each other of being, horrible racists, people are committing horrible violence. I think it's awful, but I think that, Trump could be doing more, but it's probably not the easiest seat to be in the world either.
Right. No, a fair comment. I note how, and it's true, Trump potentially is in a lose-lose. At the same time, one wonders, could he have been a little bit more articulate, or in a way that he's, handled some of those delicate questions. For example, Taj references there, during the debate, he could have literally just said, I condemn white supremacy, and that's it. But that kind of skirting around it felt a bit ducky and divey. But it remains to be seen how he manages that. Chaps, you've been really, really, really good. Yes, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being those people with no lives that have stayed up to endure this watch party with us. I'm actually joking, by the way. I mean, I'm up and I'm enjoying it. So appreciate your time, guys. We're going to chuck it back to Josh, who's going to just come and brief us. Stay on the line. Really love the comments. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Let's keep them coming. I'll see you two guys in a little bit. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all good, man. All good. Well, Josh, let's hear what you have to say. You've heard the two lads. They've gotten some really, really good perspectives. And interesting stuff. Trump's foreign policy, looking at that MT and just how that might influence the US election. And then we did, as these conversations go, segue into a bit of BLM and how people would vote. Intriguing stuff.
Yeah, very intriguing. I think that I would somewhat concur on the foreign policy front in terms of how Trump has been doing. There are some, the Middle East peace deals, although there is some controversy as to how much, the Trump administration was responsible for. Then maybe there was, some work that had been done by the Obama administration. But I think essentially when you have a man who postures himself as a strong man in the White House, who is willing to show himself to be a crazy man at times, right? Who is willing to wage scorched earth campaigns against his opponents and, betray his allies via NATO, pull out of agreements he says he's going to pull out of, start a trade war that is, hurting his core base, like really hurting the farmers that backed him. If you are an international leader looking at that, you must be thinking, when this man comes to the table and says that he's going to do something, he's going to do it. So I better, shape up and, sit down and actually listen to what he's going to say. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which, 20 years ago would have been the start of World War III. So with a man like that, I think he does have negotiating power. But then when it comes to domestic stuff, I think it's basically the corruption of the past plus a little bit of fascism. A term I'm coining tonight is clown car fascism. It's a sort of autocracy that comes in a package that looks amusing and quite ridiculous, but in its essence is something very, very dangerous. And I think as much as he is a funny character, Trump, the other day just boasted about how he sent in state troopers to execute a protester, an extrajudicial killing. And then we see that there are forced hysterectomies taking place on the southern border. And we see that, his cabinet members and people close to him are being sent to prison, indicted, convicted, etc. This man is not somebody to perhaps to be laughed at initially, but then understand that behind the veneer of clownery is a man that is either too incompetent to stop the evil around him, or doesn't really care because the evil and the far right nonsense that he is enabling is actually keeping him in office. But just to give you an update, because that was a little bit of a run from me.
On a lighter note, thanks, Josh.
on a lighter note.
So what's on the news, buddy?
I'll give you, because of time, I'll give you a quick snapshot. So at the moment, Biden is on 119 electoral votes, according to the New York Times. Trump is on 94. Trump has picked up Arkansas and Indiana. Biden has picked up New Mexico. At the moment, we have all sorts of results coming in from the swing states. So Georgia, currently 22% reporting 57% to Trump. So again, that could change, but its early results are looking good for Trump. However, Biden is actually outperforming Clinton in the suburbs of Atlanta by about 10 points. So that could be a sign of something to come if he's able to consistently overperform Clinton's margins in the rest of Georgia and in the urban centers where Democrats usually hold the seats across the country. It's the same thing with Michigan, less than 10% reporting, but 58% to Trump. In Pennsylvania, we've got 5% reporting, but 80% Biden. So again, we're grasping at straws here, but this is all we've got. What's really interesting, actually, and the last point I'll make is that Texas is 56% reporting, 50% to Biden. Biden had a slight edge that has reduced from 5% to, well, now it's 50-50. And Biden is outperforming Clinton's numbers in Houston and Dallas, but he needs to outperform them even more by what is happening right now to do it. But Texas was not really, it was always a kind of a pie in the sky sort of.
I think we've lost Josh. Mike, that's okay. That's all right. He made his point. Appreciate it, Josh. We'll catch up with you in a little bit, my friend. But some interesting stuff there, MT. It's an interesting night so far, and it's I'm resisting the urge and the temptation that you watch the polls come in, you watch them go, oh wow, okay, he's won that, and then there's always this little guy on my shoulder going, yeah, great, buddy, but have they counted them all? So we'll see how that plays out. That's just the reality of this year's election. It's the backdrop of a pandemic. But yeah, interesting evening so far.
Very, very interesting. I must say, I've got many thoughts, but we haven't got the time. I do think you were very kind to our last guest. I think you could have hit them a bit. They were saying some stuff. I mean, a man gave Donald Trump 7.5 out of 10.
He did. And you know what? But we seek to be the platform where you can say what you wish to say and not be lynched for it. The man gave Donald Trump 7.5.
But you should have given him a verbal spanking at least. How could you give Donald? Listen, and then. But
hold on. You raise a good point. But here's the intriguing thing in relation to foreign policy and how it plays out with votes. Touch says, no, I'll give him 7.5 because he's gone out there, he's done his Maverick thing, fantastic. Yeah. But I wouldn't vote for him. Isn't that intriguing?
Why wouldn't you vote for Trump, Michael?
Well, look, isn't that interesting how foreign policy in the minds of voters doesn't really seem to be, especially in America, play a significant part in their thought process. I thought that was intriguing. 7.5, but I won't vote to it. And of course, Will was clear about where his loyalties lie, which is also fantastic.
But also, I mean, what was said about, because the thing about Donald Trump is, when people talk about him being a bad actor and stuff like that, I often say, where we say Donald Trump is malevolent, he's probably incompetent. And a lot of his perceived malevolence is just him being incompetent.
Right.
Unfortunately, people give a lot more credulence to him. They say that he's just. I hate the narrative that he's this mastermind behind the. No, he's not. He's as thick as you think he is.
Really?
And that's been well documented. Of course, his staffers, everyone who works with him, gives the stories if he doesn't read anything. He wants things in bullet points. He doesn't know what's going on. Now, here's the issue. A broken clock's right twice, right? Folks then say when he does something that works, they go, wow, he's a genius. No, he's not. We know who Donald Trump is. I hate to parrot the line of Joe Biden here, but we know who Donald Trump is. But we must move on. One funny thing that one of your guests did say was this kung flu. And it just made me think, well, think what you want about Trump, and his friends.
The messaging sticks.
The man's funny, right?
Listen,
that's funny.
You can't negate that. That's true. You can't negate that. And I'll say this, I'm actually enjoying watching some of his rallies just for the comedic effect that he has. He just kind of walks into a crowd and decides, I'm not going to use a teleprompter. What's on my mind? Okay, stream of consciousness. Here we go. And
he's confident about it.
Yeah.
He just says it. But also, on a more serious note, it shows us this kind of movement away from a time where, presidents were buttoned up and very straight talking.
Yeah.
And I guess the question now is, what is conservatism? Because Donald Trump is such a domineering figure. Lots of commentators say he's kind of reinvented modern conservatism, and he's birthed this new protectionist Trumpism thing. And I guess the question is, when Trump does leave, because he does have to leave at some stage, even if it's not tonight, at some stage he will have to leave the office. What will be left of the Republican Party? Right. So let's bring on two guests. And Mike, you can join us or leave. It's up to you. But
am I supposed to go?
No, you can stay because I think we're enjoying this. You should hang on. Let's bring on two guests and let's talk a bit about the future of conservatism. So let's bring on Melissa and Siobhan. Join us now if you're listening in, and let's consider what becomes of the Republican Party if, right? And some probably say when Donald Trump loses, but if he loses, what happens next? I wonder if Melissa can hear. Oh, superb. Well, hey, folks, welcome to this discussion. Lovely to have you both with us. We're considering what happens if Donald Trump loses. What's next for conservatism? I mean, we should probably even start with the obvious question: is Donald Trump a conservative?
Donald Trump is an opportunist.
Siobhan is onto something. She's onto something.
No, first and foremost, no. I think it's whatever is going to get him into the spotlight, that's where he'll swing. Because if you notice back in his past, he was also a Democrat.
Yes, he was.
He donated to Democratic campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when we say, oh, the conservative party, and for me personally, the presidential camp, just the president, that doesn't necessarily mean much to me because one of the races that I'm looking at is the Senate.
Right.
So I think more so than anything that I think conservatism is going to be the same conservatism because push Donald Trump aside, everybody that's his party is going to back him. Even the conservatives is going to back him because it's either him or the other side. Right. So it's not going to I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think they're going to go back to, honestly, I don't even know if they're going to go back, but I don't think that it's so much of a question as is Donald Trump a conservative. It's the matter of fact of I'm not going to speak out against the man that's my bread and butter.
Okay. Right. What do you make of that, Melissa?
I have to slightly disagree just a bit because I don't think he is necessarily a conservative. I feel like at times he has his own party at times. So I'd have to say, yes, at times he can be conservative. He does his own thing, to be honest. But I think he's not really in the Conservative Party. I think he ran because it's anything that's anti Barack Obama or anti-Biden. I mean, as he said in the presidential debate that, he ran because Biden and Obama were doing a terrible job. So I think really he's not really running. He didn't become president because he's part of the Conservative Party, but because it was anything that wasn't Biden and anything that wasn't Obama.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of like the future of conservatism, I think the idea of Trumpism will really have an effect on the Republican Party, whether he wins or loses, because I think his brand of politics, his stance on politics will leave an impact, will leave an effect. It doesn't necessarily leave a standard, and even if it did, it's pretty low. But I think it's definitely like a unshakable mandate within the party that maybe someone else will maybe follow in his footsteps. Hopefully not, but that could be the case. But I think...
Sorry about that. It was a bit of a lag. Please carry on.
I think that even if he loses, he will still remain almost the figurehead of the GOP. Yeah, so that's what I think.
Go on, Siobhan. I see you scratching your head a bit there. What do you think?
I don't think he'll be a figurehead, but his practices and implementations will have a lasting effect. By golly, how he did the Supreme Court how he packed the courts, period, is going to have a lasting effect on America's judicial system and how they sway and how things sway. Because once the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, goes up, more than likely it's about to be overturned. So, and that's going to be... It's not necessarily have to go taken to the Supreme Court. Now that he has packed the court to a more of a conservative view, that could be stopped at the appellate court or even like I say, even the district level. So I think that in that regard, yes. But as far as him being a figurehead for like the GOP, I don't think so. They're using him because he is what we have right now. They're not going to say, "Oh, I'm going to go for Biden." They're not going to do that. That's simply the
well, some Republicans have, and I guess behind the question is Trump a conservative is really, I guess, my desire to work out whether this is just some random aberration or if this is the new normal for the GOP. Because let's not forget, when Donald Trump was running, we all remember, you got to cast your mind back to 4 years ago, where you had that Republican primary race with what felt like 65 different candidates, right? And they all laughed and jeered at him. This man's not conservative, they often said. It's not conservative. You had Lindsey Graham. I was like Bible studies earlier.
That's right.
Just a few minutes ago. Sorry. He's dead, Billy Graham. No. But Lindsey Graham, let's be honest, it's kind of like a zombie, isn't he? It's close to it, anyways. But during the primaries, Billy Graham was saying the most terrible things about. Sorry, Lindsey Graham was saying the most terrible things about Donald Trump. And within a couple of years, we've seen the GOP just capitulate and just become like this kind of shell that just does Trump's bidding. The question is, once Trump's done, either tonight, tomorrow, in the next few weeks, or in the next 4 years, will the GOP make this resurgence, or will this be the new normal, so to speak?
Yeah, I might just to come in there. You know, a lot's been said, and we have raised this before on the show, and I've talked about the idea that the GOP is essentially being captured by a faction. It's not essentially been overtaken. It's not been essentially fully immersed or consumed by it, but there's definitely a faction of the GOP that's been captured by this philosophy and this mindset. You know, the likes of Steve Bannon, who've come in and essentially pushed, this conservatism, driven by populism. That's how I view it. There's conservatism, and then the vehicle to that driver was this populist rhetoric and approach to politics. The question is, should Donald Trump lose, or one day should he, when he exits office, whether now or later, will the GOP self-correct? Personally, I feel like there's still a lot of American and British, whether you like it, but we're focused on America, a lot of American politics right now that is still controlled by certain people in certain quarters, whether that's, from the political elites, as you want to call them, or just donors who have it in their best interest to back whatever candidate was going to advance their view. So I do believe there might be a sense. I think, especially if Joe Biden wins, of the GOP doing a little bit of introspection about what's the game plan, what's the next wave of attack. In other words, who is that person who's going to come alongside America and say, look, I too want to restore the soul of the nation. Won't you give the Republicans a chance? Because I think that would be the sensible playbook for any serious political party. We need to self-correct, because that clearly has worked, but it's not worked in the traditional sense. We've not been able to control Trump. That's the other thing, in the way that we've enjoyed, previous control. One of the things they talk about is how Trump really got rid of lobbyists. He just chucked lobbyists out the door. Said, I want nothing to do with you guys. I'm dealing with my special advisors and I'm going to make a call. I think there's a part of Republicanism that might want to see that reinstated, just because Washington is an influential place. They want to have a role in in making sure that machine continues to turn. So there's a part of me that strongly believes the GOP will definitely self-correct.
Right, I want to jump straight to Melissa and ask. So, Melissa, if you don't mind, obviously telling us, who do you think is going to win this election? Would you describe yourself as a conservative? What do you make of the kind of Black conservative movement led by the likes of Candace Owens? And,
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say
Kingface,
that.
Kingface is now deceased. Actually, I think he passed away not too long ago. And all these other kind of Black conservative figures who see Trump as a Moses-like figure who's gonna lead them away from the Democratic Party. Well, I'm coming to you next, but now, Melissa, what do you think?
Me personally, I'm not conservative. I'm not Democrat. I'm independent. I'm on the fence. But in terms of the Black conservative movement, I think actually there has been a rise of a lot of Black people moving towards, the Republicans and voting for the Republicans. And I think with that, it's more so with looking at Biden and Kamala's track record. I mean, that's something you have to look at. So I think with obviously the crime bill, the 1994 crime bill, in terms of Biden and Kamala Harris, putting people away and, happy about her.
Everyone signed, by the way, this crime bill, everyone signed it.
I know, but we can't deny that he was part of it, and it was enforced for some time. So I think with that, Black people are informing themselves. They're no longer choosing to be victims or standing at the point of not knowing, not being politically intellectual. They're choosing to inform themselves. They're choosing to educate themselves on what they should do and how they should vote. They're not being, fed through the media anymore. They're actually actively looking out. And I think it's more so with the youth. It's more so with the young people now, the Gen Z generation, who are choosing to step outside the box. They're not choosing to vote just like how their parents voted or their grandparents voted or whoever's telling them to vote. They're actually educating themselves. They want to actually see a change happen. And I think maybe they're seeing that with Trump. I mean, he's imprinted so much on everyone's minds. And I think that has something to do with the media, that I think maybe they're interpreting it as, he's actually doing something. Whereas you've got Biden and, calling him Sleepy Joe and different things like that. It does have an effect. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that the point you make that's so kind of salient to me is this idea that Black folk, especially in America, are kind of having a political awakening, if you like. They're realizing that they're not a monolith. They don't have to vote in one block. I mean, there is something to be said about folks who criticize Black people for voting the same way, because, it's well known in the kind of system you have in America. It's well known for minorities to group together and to vote in blocks. I mean, so many other minorities vote in blocks. So I don't know why. I'm not sure why it's a problem when Black people vote in blocks. Latinos vote in blocks. LGBTQ vote in blocks. Like so many groups vote in blocks. So that's neither here nor there. But I wonder for you, Siobhan, how does it feel when you hear this kind of this Blexit movement, this kind of breaking away from the Democratic Party, your emancipation away from groupthink, as it were, as the way some people describe it? Does that resonate with you, or do you just think, nope, not interested?
Nope, not interested. No. You can return to sender. Y'all believe what you want, not me. You know what? Okay, so I am it's a two-side kind of coin for me. I'm like, yes, why people are voting. Yes, you're actually not staying dormant. And regardless of whether or not you vote for Biden, whether or not you vote for Trump, my main thing is we're not just voting for the president. We're voting, and I'm going to harp on this for so many long. You're voting on other issues too. You're voting for amendments to your state. You're voting on local and state elections, your taxes. All of these things are lumped up into the presidential election. Of course, it's overshadowed by the face of the country and the face of the world stage, but that's also what we're voting for too. So to see that more Black people are voting for their communities, essentially, that's something that you need to stand up for, regardless if you are voting for Biden or Trump. Personally, I don't get it, but I get it why why Black people will vote for Trump. The one main thing is the economy and whether or not my taxes are going to go up. Regardless, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows, America is a very me country. And in certain ways, we're fiscally conservative, but socially liberal. So don't take my money, but don't put children in cages too. So, and a lot of people want their cake and they want to eat it too. So they want, and I saw this a while ago that people said that somebody had a conversation a while ago, I can't even put my finger on it, that in order to win in America, you have to be either extremely conservative or extremely liberal. When the country in itself is very moderate. We're very in between. Like I said, we're conservatively when it comes to our coins, our money. We don't want anybody to touch it. I have to make a living too. But at the same time, we're like, everybody should love everybody. And why are we doing this? And let's hug trees. And it's a twofold. It's a twofold. So
well, if you vote for Trump, there may be no trees left. I'm joking. Just kidding. I'm just checking you're awake. I'm checking you're awake.
But no, I mean, when it comes to that, yay for Black people for voting. Why? You can vote who you want, but I'm also at the same time, why?
Yeah. So essentially, the jury's out in terms of what happens to conservatism once we're done with Trump. Folks, I'm going to say bye, but only a short bye because we're going to bring you back because we're going to get some breaking news from Josh again. Now, Josh was wearing a jumper before. Now he's wearing a T-shirt. I'm just hoping. Yeah, good. He's still wearing a T-shirt. This is good. I thought as the night got more stressed, I thought you were just...
I had to...
Taking off layers.
It was...
Josh, keep your clothes on, me, please. I don't want to see
a
that.
Family show, Josh. He's frozen. What an epic position to freeze in.
I know. You can't make this stuff up, mate. This is what they call, this is when they go on TV, this is live, folks. You'll have to bear with us. This is just the reality of live television.
Absolutely.
No,
but bear with us. You want it live? Here's what you're going to get.
Yeah, this is what you're going to get. But while we wait for Josh to reconnect there, I thought there were some really good points that Siobhan raised, but just coming back to you being upset about kind of Black people voting in blocks. Oh, Josh is back. Let me make my point, Josh, then you can jump in.
I'm back.
Fantastic. I personally don't. I'm probably of the school of thought that is not necessarily entirely convinced, but beginning to lean towards the side that says, actually, we need to probably interrogate that notion a little bit more, and my position on this in terms of kind of allowing the space for free thinking for a change. But let me not take Josh's
right. Just to press on that idea about free thinking.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Free thinking is a priori, a great thing. Everyone should think freely. However, when you are a minority group that still doesn't have some very foundational rights, if you like, where the kind of founding principles are still illusory to you, I do think in that when you're kind of there in terms of the maturity of your country, you do need to come together to ensure some very foundational rights. And I just think Black Americans haven't quite realized that yet. So when folks go, we should all be free and liberal, I go, yes, but let's do that when the median disposable income is somewhat, it's within the margin of error, for Blacks and whites. How about we do it then?
And the difficulty, I guess, I find, because I'm totally for it. You can't expect us, as a community to vote in a certain way, like the playing field is level. On the other hand, there's this pulling, I guess, towards this notion of, we're better off than we were 50 years ago. And of course we are. And yes, there are some people within the community that have bettered themselves. Fantastic. And I guess it tends to happen in those circles where, they've elevated their level of living, perhaps level of thinking, perhaps access to new information. And they feel, whether you're 50 Cent or somebody, that, wait a minute, now my personal rights are getting infringed on outside of the community. And that's when you might potentially see some of these people, not these people, but break away. What I'm saying is I think it's a lot more nuanced than just, hey, let's vote in blocks to defend our turf. It's becoming a lot more nuanced, just in the nature of how politics is evolving.
Fair. No, I think you're absolutely right. It's just, for me, it's quite interesting that I hate to use kind of Marxist terminology, but whilst wearing a capitalist produced hat, no less.
Not fair.
But
free advertising.
It's interesting that it's often oppressors that tell the oppressed to be more free in their thinking, almost reticent of a divide and conquer strategy.
Mike.
Be free and diverse, so it's easier to pummel you to the ground and stop you from actually realizing upward social mobility.
I just think that's a slippery.
Jeremy Corbyn would be so proud of me right now.
Hey, don't mention Corbyn; it's a bit too soon.
You're right. Sorry. Right. Let's move on.
On the Isle of Wight. Sorry. But apparently it's on the Isle of Wight, hanging out there.
Let's move on.
That's a fact.
Sorry.
We digress.
Sorry, Josh. Can you tell it's getting later? We're becoming more and more unhinged.
It's okay. I'm enjoying the debate. I think it's a good points raised on both sides. I think to a certain extent this idea of group identity politics is necessitated and been forged and forced upon, like the group identity has been forced upon people who, in the ideal scenario, you are thinking for yourself in that like most kind of the most broad sense of the word. But sometimes you have to band together as a group to face a problem. If you're being slaughtered at Christmas, then the turkey lobby has every right to organize. It's the rational thing to do in some cases. But I digress.
Yeah, and now I'm hungry. So thank you very much.
This is my last update of the night. So what's been happening?
You're gonna tell us who's won.
I mean, look, in my heart, Biden has won, and if the world reflected my heart, it would be much like this painting here, New Dawn. But in terms of actual reality outside of my heart, Biden's on 122, Trump's on 93 electoral votes. Biden just took District of Columbia, which is completely expected. Trump has taken North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Louisiana, and Nebraska. In terms of our swing results, both Georgia and Michigan are overwhelmingly going for Trump at the moment, but Georgia is only 35% of the vote counted, Michigan only 16%. New Hampshire going towards Biden, but only 14% of the vote has been counted. At the moment, North Carolina, really interesting what's going on here is because it's too close to call. Biden is only leading by about 2.5% with 79% of the vote in. At the moment, what we're waiting for are three particular counties called Jackson, Hyde, and Caswell. And they usually go in the direction that the whole state goes. They went for Obama in 2008, Mitt Romney in 2012, and then Trump in 2016. So who knows? These people are picking and choosing every little bit of the pie they're having. So who knows where that could go? In terms of the House, Fox News has just made a prediction that the Dems will not only keep their majority in the House, which everyone expected, but actually expand it by 5 seats. So we expect to see Nancy Pelosi doing sarcastic clapping from behind, and liberals going, yes, resistance queen. But then she'll vote for, Trump's military budget, and then virtually enable every bit of neoliberal cronyism that we've seen for the past 20 years. But yes, queen, go clap, go clap.
Whoa,
I digress.
Whoa,
I digress.
Josh, what's going on? As you removed your jacket, you became unhinged as well.
I've removed all filters. This is raw, unfiltered TTS Josh. But just to wrap up with some feel good news, or we've got Madison Cawthorn, yes, on the Republican Party. She's just been elected to Congress at the ripe old age of 25. So she's now the youngest member of Congress ever. So she's taken the crown from AOC. Something that the Republicans, I'm sure, are very happy with. We have one of the first openly trans people to be elected as a state senator in Delaware. And then we also have Georgia sending a congressperson who believes in the QAnon conspiracy, that there is a cabal of Satanist pedophiles run by the Democrats who are out to get us all. So, politics is going to get, Trump being gone does not mean the Trumpism brand of just sheer, rejection of reality will not carry on. And, last feel-good story of the day, we had one election county who had a scare with a Trump supporter with a gun. And then in the same county, we had some man arrested for trespassing, but because he had bought a boombox and turned the pavement into a dance party, which the police weren't having. So, all sorts of things going on in America. Maybe there'll be riots, maybe it'll be a dance-off, maybe we'll see a West Side Story sort of situation. More likely riots.
That's only in your heart, Josh. That's only in your heart.
That's my heart. That's the painting. That's the painting.
Well, that's very, very exciting. I mean, on those two massive hopes, wishes, predictions, it would be great to consider now what America would actually look like under Biden or Trump. Like, let's
all I took away from that was Queen. That's all I remember. The minute Josh said Queen, I was just like, mate, where am I? What's happening?
Mike, it's almost 3 a.m. We're nearing the end of our coverage.
Sorry.
So this was always going to happen. But one of those worlds Josh just narrated will be reality for millions of Americans, and indeed, by extension, us here. So let's welcome in this final debate. And Josh, I think actually you're welcome to stay for this, because this is going to be quite spirited. I think we want to welcome a couple. We want to welcome a couple of our guests. We want to welcome Adam Jr. and Afshad into this final segment where we
left the best for last.
Where we consider, and if you're still watching, you're welcome. This is a treat for you. Right, so enjoy, but also get involved in the comment section. Don't just listen to us. Let us know what you think. We're going to be reading your comments out, engaging with you. So please do speak to us. And what we want to consider, folks, is what looks better to you right now as you look forward. Is it Biden's America or Trump's America? The floor's open. Let's start with Afshan. If she's on, is she on yet, or Afshan's not on yet? Okay, I don't think Afshan's quite on yet. Oh, and she is.
Hey.
Ashley, let's start with you. What's looking better? You've been staying up all night. You've been watching this. What's more appealing to you? Biden's America or Trump's America?
I'm just going to correct you there, Mike. I actually took a half an hour nap, and I've only just woken up to find that we don't have a clear understanding of what's happening with either Florida or Ohio. I'm sorry. What? So just give me a minute to actually wake up a little bit. The question was,
This is awesome.
do you know what? This is how I felt throughout the entire Trump administration. I felt like this all day, where I'm just constantly waking up at 2:30 in the morning, either with nightmares or with shivers about, I don't know what he's going to do next. I remember when I was first writing for the Common Sense Network, and I was writing about Trump and all of his jokes. And I was like, there must be a point to this. There must be a strategy to this. He must be being silly and being really stupid for a reason. And it turns out, no, that's just how he is. And this is just his way of rolling and doing things. So I'm hoping that we get something slightly better with Biden. But I don't know, man. It's more and more likely, looking more and more likely that it's going to be a Trump administration again, which is terrifying. You know,
terrifying for you, maybe, but Junior's smiling.
You want a Trump administration? You want another 4 years of this and worse? No, please do. Please
Junior, what do you think? You're smiling ear to ear.
No, I'm smiling because it would be really strange to define what really these both administrations will look like. Like we do have an idea, because if you look at the current political landscape of America, especially what most people might be some of the reasons why they are voting is whether some believe the democracy of America is at stake. For example, for the first time, you are having the international watchdog watching America, particularly right now, and their democracy, what that will look like. And it has never happened before. Normally, these people, they watch elections in Africa, in South America. So this is what is at stake internationally. So that is why this particular election is drawing a lot of attention, because many foreign leaders are looking to see what America will look like. With Donald Trump, America will mean we might be risking NATO, because Donald Trump is going to finish what he started 4 years ago with NATO. We might be risking maybe United Nations. We might be risking WHO. So there might be continued economic strings with Russia, China, and Europe. So that is what Trump administration might look like. A Trump administration that is going to try to conclude on those promises, and is going to obviously put pressure on his falling apart.
So that world you just narrated, Adam, how does that look to you? Does that sound like a world you go, yeah, that's a bit of me? Or are you thinking, no, we need a different type of world?
I mean, do you know what? I never thought I'd actually agree with Afshan much, but I do actually have to on this one. Because I mean, the last 4 years of a Donald Trump presidency have certainly had its ups and downs. You know, it was reasonably defendable for the first year. And then when he realized he was just going to treat it like some sort of reality TV show, it was, this isn't the politics that I want to see. This isn't the politics that I certainly signed up for. And, you know, there needs to be some decency, the phrase from, you know, without pardon the pun of saying common sense, I think would be quite a nice way to put it. But I think, I mean, from a British point of view as well, we should want a Biden presidency. And you kind of think, when we were talking about a Brexit trade deal, you talk about who wants a deal with Donald Trump, a deal with Joe Biden. You know, the way you say it doesn't sound as dark, as bad, and it's things like that. The world that I want to, Donald Trump has withdrawn funding for the World Health Organization during a pandemic. He has not refused withdrawing from the United Nations and NATO, as previously said, which of course are something that Jeremy Corbyn supporters are really much in favour of. So I mean, there's a lot of things that I really, really dislike about Donald Trump, because Joe Biden, the whole point about restoring the soul of our country is that, you know, the country that you want to live in, you know, we all want to have this American dream of owning our own home and having a great family and owning the grass that's green and the dog on, you know, whatever. We have to be realistic, but a country where people have much more opportunity and there's just much more liberty and decency about the country is probably one that's led by Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
I don't necessarily agree, to be sincere, because it depends on how you frame it. For example, because a Joe Biden America will look like what we already experienced with Obama, which means he's going to obviously try to restate the Paris Agreement. He's going to try, obviously, to have more close relationship with Europe. He's going to try to have more better relationship with China. So it's not that Joe Biden is going to do something new. He might just try to reinstate what Trump has tried to change. And obviously, that is how politics works. But I believe that when you say liberty, it is kind of a liberty, because under Biden, we might have a series of censorship, which not many people might like as well, in terms of behavior, in terms of speech, in terms of what is acceptable. I think there are bad and good on both sides. And obviously then right now it is left for the American people to determine really what they want. We, from outside, we can very obviously describe how we frame it, but then there is the differences of how as well Trump and Biden will look for the American people, because for some American people, Trump might be this guy that might change their economy, that will be able to provide for every family, being able to take ownership of their money and so forth, and as well how Biden will look for the American folks. I think what Biden will look like for America is different from what people think it will look like in the outside, and what Trump will look
of course
for
it is. What I want to know almost is, which one we think would be better, I guess, for Americans, but also for a global context. We're in the UK. We've hinted already at the special relationship. It's very important for us. Josh, when you look at what's happening, what do you think the world needs right now? Of course, Afshan's already spoken about that kind of mental fatigue almost, that watching politics so closely for the past 4 years, what it's led to. I mean, do you have that same fatigue? Are you kind of excited by it? I was shopping today and I spoke to one of the shopping assistants who said she found it exciting. And I thought, I don't know if I would call it that, but what would you call it? Is it exciting?
I think the world needs less excitement. We are in the midst of a global pandemic. We are in the midst of the greatest economic crisis, the likes of which have not even revealed itself yet, because the governments are still propping up the economies. And so in terms of what the screenwriters of 2020 are doing, I'm excited. My heart is pumping. Every day I wake up and more people have died and the economy has crashed even more. So quite frankly, from our leaders, what we need, and I hate to say it, is a return to what some people term was the neoliberal world order. So a Joe Biden administration, I think, very much reverts back to the Obama era and the Clinton era of polite politics, where behind the doors the same sort of corruption is going on, the same sort of backdealing is going on, the same sort of Republican Party exists. But then what Trump has essentially done is come and just kind of like, look, I accept bribes from lobbyists, I accept all of these things, and I'm involved in this, and my kids can benefit from he's done everything out in the open. So what we get from Trump is the old school kind of corruption and old school politics, because Trump promised so much in terms of draining the swamp, but at last count he had hired over 2,000 Republican lobbyists and surrounded himself with the old guard Republican people who then ran his campaign. So Trump ran this 2020 campaign, instead of the populism of 2016, we saw stock market and tax cuts and traditional Republican sort of lines. But the danger I see with Trump is the fact that Trump is the old school politics plus a little bit of fascism. It's old school politics plus boasting about having police kill a protester, plus forced hysterectomies where they're taking wombs out of women on the southern border when they detain them. It's the old school politics plus racial tensions being inflamed, and sending in secret federal police into democratic cities and withholding funds from California and withholding funds from democratic states because they didn't vote his way. So you've got this old school politics tinged with this cruelty, which essentially Joe Biden is old school politics, because if you look at all the people he's vetting for his cabinet, not one Bernie Sanders supporter, not one of the kind of the new left progressive AOC types. It's old school. It's the Susan Rice types. He's taking us back. He's even vetting John Kasich, for goodness sake. Like, he's vetting old school Republicans. So Biden is very much a return to old politics, which isn't a good thing. But at the moment, I take old politics over fascism. Absolutely.
Michael, do you ever wish Josh would tell us what he really thinks? He just never
Josh
tells us what he thinks.
He is not honest enough. You need to work on that, champ. Come on.
Michael, what do you make of this? You know, it may be shocking for folks watching to know that we're all part of the same team, but somehow we are, with all these divergent views. But Mike, what do you make of all of this? I mean, are you longing for, as Josh says, that period of normalcy, as coined by an ex-president, or are you actually loving the excitement, especially as a political junkie?
Yeah, look, we need the shake-up. Politics needs the shake-up. I think, there's evidence to suggest, including here in the United Kingdom and across Europe, that people are probably, and this is where I think the Democrats, quite frankly, whether they win tonight or not is a different situation. But I think the Democrats, from the 2016 campaign to date, have one problem, and that problem is called complacency. They for me, represent a party that's really failed, quite frankly, to adapt. You had a 2016 scenario where you lose an election, which should have been in the bag. I'd say should have, because they had literally everything in their favor. They had 4 years to prepare a candidate. That's the reality. And prepare a strategy to counter what was, a really difficult 4 years for the Democrats. And the best they could produce, and this is my only gripe with the Democrats, and whether they like it or not, the best they could give us was Joe Biden. Nah. And you see there, on principle, I just think, if I was a teacher, I was marking this exam sheet, I'd say, good student needs to study more, or could do better. Purely because the best you could do in 4 years, give us Joe Biden. I refuse to believe that within the Democratic Party, there wasn't anyone more suited for the role.
No, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to interrupt you there. Did you not think then?
You need to interrupt me. Thank you, ma'am.
Did you not think? Did you not think then 4 years ago the same about Trump? Because who the heck was Trump? Literally, he was literally a TV presenter who tried to corrupt half of the US by trying to build buildings and then losing them and then blunt his name all over the world. That was who he was. That was it. He had very little money. Everything that he was doing was a marketing stunt, and he was trying to build an empire. So we could.
Of course, Afshan, the point I'm making is about the Democratic Party. I'm not saying Trump shouldn't have. The whole premise I'm making is the Republicans and Trump, rightfully so, shook up a complacent Democratic Party. That's the point I'm making. It's mainly about the Democrats and not Republicans.
I think shake-up is a really use when you've got the first openly transgender. So I'm just we're having these issues already where trans rights are going to be taken away from people if there's another 4 years. That's already a given. They're already on that pathway with Trump. And when you've got people's rights and you've got people that are living there in the US, we're looking at Black Lives Matter marches happening all over the place because people are actually terrified for their life. On a person-to-person level, politics, economy aside, which affects them in the long term. I'm talking about in the next year. I'm talking about in the next 6 months. I'm talking about policies that he's going to bring in, going, the country supports me again for another 4 years. That's the kind of shit we're going to have to deal with. That can't happen. Do you know what? If it's Biden, that's cool. And even if they put forward Kanye, you know what? I'd have gone out there and I'd have gone, you know what? Kanye is better than Trump. But it's not. It's Biden. And so, but Biden's better than this anything right now.
Well, you know what? So Adam's taking a drink every time he agrees with you, I think. And he's going, why do I keep agreeing with Afshan? Adam, what are you thinking?
Thankfully, it's just Fanta. So this time, this election, I shan't be on in the tab for my fantastic pre-election drinks. No, I mean, I want to pick up initially actually on a point that Junior made about there being more what was the word about there being more sort of suppression and the idea of your freedom of speech. That being a censorship is the word. I couldn't believe I forgot that. I want to pick up on that actually because I don't think that there would be more censorship under a Biden administration. I do disagree with that. I think safe space has been around for during George Bush and during Obama. It's certainly not gone away during Trump. And in fact, actually, we've probably seen. It's probably likely to be less sensitive with the fact that Black Lives Matter are marching in Warrington, then in Washington. That's where I work. They are marching in Washington, marching all over the place. When people protest on the streets, that isn't necessarily a crime. That is anti-censorship. They are making their voices very well known. So I don't think that would happen. But the reason I was very surprised to keep agreeing with Ashan, when I met you, Ashan, I thought we're just going to disagree so much. But if I did have a drink for every time I've agreed with you tonight, I'd probably be in an ambulance by now, which is really concerning. But anyway,
you just got to get on the non-alcoholic. That's what I'm on. The non-alcoholic bubbly. It's great.
I'm glad to hear it's not alcoholic. I was worried earlier. It's a pretty large bottle for one.
But the point I want to pick up on actually on what Ashan said is I agree actually is Trump came out of nowhere. There was a rumor for a long time that he was going to run for the presidency. In 2012 there was a rumor he didn't run for it. There was individual polls. Trump was polling less than 5%. He was polling only better than Jeb Bush did in 2016. Like he wasn't polling very well.
Jeb Bush.
And hey, please clap. You know what I mean. And I, honestly, Jeb Bush was the first Republican candidate I wanted to win because he was still a better candidate. That you can all laugh, but in reality, he was absolutely a better candidate than Donald Trump was in the end. And the reason I probably would have relatively looking back on it, back Trump over Hillary, was because of the behind corruption of Hillary Clinton and the whole email scandal and things like that.
Okay.
But when you actually, I'm going to say no. Wait, let me finish my point.
I'm sorry.
Let me finish my point. I want you to understand what I'm going to say.
Okay.
But it's obviously like, and again, what was it Josh who said? Obviously the idea that the Obama administration was corrupt and I just think it's a load of baloney, and you just have to go back, and I would really be interested to see in what type of things that Joe Biden was probably involved with in the corruption that he was involved in, because there's certainly no evidence to suggest he was. There's certainly been much more backroom deals led by Donald Trump and the Republican Party than there have been with Biden and Hillary.
Adam, I get your point. But I just think it's just fantastic when folks make the comparison between Donald Trump and anybody else when it comes to corruption. I mean, come on. He's gotten rich off the presidency. All of his advisors are related to him. Yeah. He hasn't released his tax returns. His charity's been shut down. Here's the point. This is not even about you per se, but I just think we're at risk of kind of forgetting just how unique this situation is, and I think likening someone using a BlackBerry to process their emails is the same as someone like Donald Trump, and just saying them in the same breath. I think it's a bit kind of like, I just don't think that's a fair kind of comparison to make.
Absolutely, and look, I am a Republican, but the thing is I have a moral compass, so I know when things are right. And
you know what? I'm glad you said that because I forgot mine.
So
I literally forgot it. So let me get mine.
I recognize when things goes wrong, and there's an absolute string of Republicans that I'd love to see re-elected tonight, but one of them is not Donald Trump. And the tax returns are absolutely important. The tax returns are absolutely important. I don't think they should have to release them. I'm not personally bothered about that. But you know, if you do release them, then you know, when you've only paid a couple of £100 in tax returns, it doesn't really look good.
But that's interesting. They don't think they should have to release them. But you know, just because of time, I'm going to have you guys because yeah, thank you. That's a very helpful reminder. We're all about to kind of jump off the stream. I want us all to make our predictions. Who's going to win the election? And obviously, earlier in kind of around 10 a.m., 11 a.m., we'll start to get a sense of what it's actually looking like. But before that time comes, I'm going to go around. Just want you to give you your prediction, maybe one line, and just so we're clear, one line, folks. I'm going to be. I feel like the supply teacher.
Commas and clauses.
No commas. One semicolon. No, I'm joking. It's just who you think's gonna win, who you think the next president will be, and we'll end it here. So, who wants to kick us off?
I'll say Biden wins this election. It's been a good, unity from the Democrats. They've tried, and I think Biden is gonna have Pennsylvania and other few states, maybe Texas might be a risk as well, but I believe Biden might just have it because of how Democrats has really worked hard together.
Superb. Thank you. Look at that. What a demonstration. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. My heart wants to say Biden, but I feel like it's Trump. But the real winner is going to be Kanye, as we all know. Get out of this.
You know what? It's so odd because I saw one of the news articles. I forgot where it was. Report that Kanye is going to cast his first vote for himself, and I just went, "Well, that's that. Thank God there's one because that's pretty much all he's getting." Right? Who's next?
Oh, go on, don't be shy.
I can go. Okay, I think Biden's going to win by a smaller margin than people think. So maybe 10, 20, maybe even 30 electoral votes, because it's not going to happen until the mail-in ballots are cast. So we're not going to see this result for maybe a week or so. So it could look like Trump is winning in the next few days, and then it shifts because of mail-in ballots. So I'm gonna do the true politicians thing and say Trump will win initially, and then Biden will come through. Both sides.
Typical. Which brings us to you, Adam.
Sorry?
It brings us to you.
You know, the reason I'll stay silent is because I genuinely just don't know. Like last time I was very, very, I knew that Trump was going to win. I was adamant throughout the whole campaign he was going to win. But I feel tonight is still too close to call. So unfortunately, I don't feel that I can give you a prediction right now because I just genuinely don't know. It could go either way.
Boo.
Sorry to ruin the party, but if I say Trump will win, then Biden has a good chance of winning. If I say Biden will win, then Trump will win.
Just for me, do you want to say that Trump will win? Just for me, Adam.
Do you know what? I want to carry on this agreement. This is the politics that we like to see. I genuinely don't know. I think that they've both got a damn good chance, and we'll have to see. We'll have to wait out.
Well, me and Mike have given our predictions. We did say at the start that we thought Biden would win. I said Biden would get more than 322 Electoral College votes. I still believe that's the case.
No, I think that's probably a load of rubbish by now. I think we can prove that, but carry on anyway.
We'll see. Of course, folks always speak about statisticians, but they're typically correct. And you know we'll see what happens in the next few hours or so. Really, all that's left for me to say before I pass on to Mike is just thank you for joining us, for watching. I know some of you will probably watch back, and equally, thank you for watching as well. I want to encourage you to join us and be part of our community. It's free. And you join us by going to join.tcsnetwork.co.uk. That's it. And you enter your details and you're a member of our community. Thank you if you stayed up all night to watch. I'm probably going to be awake for many more hours. Probably folks here will be too. So feel free to engage with us online on Twitter. It's TCS Network, and pretty much everywhere else is TCS Network. If you're watching still on YouTube, do hit the subscribe button and press the notification. So you're first to find out about videos. No doubt we'll be talking about this for the next few days and weeks to come, because it looks like, as we said at the start, it's going to be a marathon and not a sprint. So thank you for me, and thank you to all my wonderful, lovely guests. I'm going to yield now to Mike, who's going to close us out, and then, yeah.
Why do you say yield? Like I forced you to do that.
No, you've got to yield. When we're debating, you wave your white.
I yield to my honorable gentleman. Well, look, you said it, interesting race. Incredible perspectives. It wouldn't be, a fantastic evening without this kind of controversy around it. So thanks to everybody involved. MT's already mentioned it. Appreciate everyone following us. Let's see what happens in the next coming days. Let us know your thoughts. Love to be a part of everything that you guys are doing online. So tag us, share it, blah, blah, blah. Get involved. Appreciate it, guys. Take care. Happy voting, America.
Right. So, guys, the stream has ended.